under Minister Parks Tau. He had went on an unapproved visit to Washington, D.C. in February last year, shortly after Donald Trump had been inducted into office, and when there were conversations about AGOA potentially, or South Africa potentially being excluded from AGOA. AGOA was, of course, at the time up for renewal, and there were conversations about whether or not South Africa can do anything about it. The Democratic Alliance assembled a delegation, an envoy of sorts. Can't be called an envoy if you're not actually in power, right? So a delegation, let's call it that. The Democratic Alliance had assembled a delegation, a political delegation, to send to Washington to go and massage whatever context and connections they possibly had on Capitol Hill to safeguard, in their imagination, AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act deal that South Africa at the time was benefiting from. It must be said, AGOA technically doesn't exist anymore, because the zero tariff regime under which the U.S. had been operating with Africa just no longer exists, for instance. Trump had imposed tariffs on all the entire world, really, but all African nation states included in that. And importantly here is that this visit was unapproved by the president, and Andrew Whitfield nonetheless went. I'll give more of the facts a little bit later on after 10 o'clock. I want you to be a part of it. Tune in so I can lay out the facts for you, because I think the minutiae of what transpired matters. We're going to be speaking to Dr. Susan Boysons about it. There's questions on the one hand. Did the Democratic Alliance respond immaturely? Is that emblematic and illustrative of a lack of emotional intelligence and political depth on part of the leadership of the Democratic Alliance? And that's a valid, important, and fair question. But what's also a valid, important, and fair question to ask is whether the president had overreacted in the firing of Andrew Whitfield. Would a reprimand have sufficed in this instance, or was this transgression so severe that it warranted a firing? Both those questions are equally important. But of course, what I think last week had demonstrated to us is what the balance of power really truly is in the in the government of national unity governing coalition, and what the leverage really is. I think the Democratic Alliance had learned they do not have the leverage they imagined they did. They overstated their place. This is why they threatened to walk out, and the president didn't blink, and they didn't walk out. I think that is a factual conclusion and a logical conclusion of their actions. So we're going to be talking about that and unpacking it in great detail. And then after 11 o'clock, we're going to be speaking on a very important subject. And this is the last day of June, by the way, the very last day of June. And as we close off Youth Month in South Africa, we're going to be asking the question, what happens next for South Africa's young people? What happens next? There was a Y20 summit that took place in the city of Johannesburg council chambers last week, where there's an imagination of the future of young people across G20 member states. And South Africa hosted and participated and led that dialogue. But there's a more pressing domestic question to be asking. What next? I think South Africa's young people live in unprecedented levels of exclusion in our democratic dispensation, and unprecedented levels of and gratuitous levels of inequality, really. And young people are bearing the brunt of that. So what's next? We're going to be speaking to a very fantastic panel about that. We're going to be speaking to Dominic Ralalala, who's a researcher at the Center for Social Development in Africa, Tebogo Molapisane, who's the co-founder and director of Amatuba Collective, as well as Pelele Chirwa, executive officer of Activate Change Makers. All of that's coming up on the show today. What is on your mind? Give me a call, 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032. I don't know if you can hear, but I'm a tad nasal this morning. And that's because, and I want to know from you if you've been experiencing the same. I contracted flu about 3 weeks ago, and this has been the longest bout of flu I've ever had. It's also been the weirdest bout of flu I've ever had, right? And I'm beginning to suspect that it may not have been the ordinary flu. I had flu 3 weeks ago, and 4 days later I was fine, and then 2 days after that I was not fine. And the symptoms have varied across the flu that I've had. The last bout of flu that I had, which I seemingly contracted on Wednesday really, so I wasn't on air on Wednesday and Thursday because of that, is my throat was on fire. I almost lost my voice once again, and throat being on fire coupled with congestion just made the last couple of days really, really uncomfortable for me. I had a bit of a cough this time around, which I didn't have in the last flu I had. The last flu I had just really was a great deal of nasal drip and feverish symptoms. It's been such a weird bout of flu, and a lot of like my friends who have contracted this flu also haven't quite made a full recovery within a week or two, which is what you're expected to go through when you contract flu. Mine has been going on for almost 3 weeks now, and it really is uncomfortable. I routinely would have taken the flu shot, and I think that would have protected me. Except, though, I don't know if you know, but 2 months ago, you couldn't find a flu shot in South Africa. Just if you go to pharmacies, they told you they were out of stock. You were lucky to find a pharmacy that still had the flu shot in stock. And that is because apparently, according to a pharmacist I spoke, and I mean, I haven't corroborated this information anywhere else, but apparently there was just a shipping issue with importing the flu shot into South Africa. And so a lot of pharmacies ran out and weren't replenished in time. So I went to the pharmacy about twice to try and get the flu shot, and I just couldn't. So yeah, I was wholly unprepared for this. But I've been taking my immune boosters, my vitamin C, my vitamin D, magnesium, iron, and all the necessary supplements that I should be taking, drinking a whole lot of rooibos tea with lemon and ginger in it, and a great deal of water. And a friend had introduced me to this concoction that has cayenne pepper in it, by the way. Ginger and cayenne pepper, I think, and some paprika. Really, really, really pungent, strong, and that sorted me out for a day or two, but, I didn't take it again. But, yeah, all manner of remedies that were available, I took it. I wonder if you've been experiencing a similar flu. Give me a call, 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032. I'm saying all of this to say, please excuse my nasal sound this morning. It is at no fault of my own. 19 minutes after 9.
The Northwest Provincial Legislature Portfolio Committee on Premier and Finance, chaired by Honorable Nathan Oliphant, will be conducting public hearings on the Northwest Division of Revenue Bill and Northwest Appropriation Bill on 3 July 2025 at Khopane Tribal Hall, Khopane, in Nakamudiri Molema District, Matlosana Auditorium Hall in Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District, Ipelege Multipurpose Hall, Schweizer-Reneke in Dr. Ruth Skhomutsi-Mompati District, and Safer Scale Community Hall, Safer Scale in Bujanala District. All hearings start at 10.
SAFM is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio. Call us on 086 000 2032. Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Yeah, do catch that live stream all across our social platforms. That is on YouTube, Facebook, as well as on our Twitter platforms, as you heard that promo there. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock is the open line. What's on your mind? 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032. Let's go to the lines. Fana in Danielton. Fana, good morning.
When I heard Steenhuisen making a lot of noise about this firing of that guy, I thought we would be coming with something very, very huge. It turned out to be just bluffing. It was a scarecrow. Maybe Helen Zille brought him to life. But what is this government of Michelin? It's not heaven.
Wait, you say maybe Helen Zille brought him into line?
Yeah, of course, he brought him into line.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean? What does that mean?
No, he brought him to order. He should have contacted the DA first, not just making a lot of noise by himself.
So when John Steenhuisen made the threat that the Democratic Alliance would withdraw from the coalition, you think he made that without consulting the DA?
Yes, it was just an outburst. They haven't given him the green light to go and talk like this publicly. You see, that's why now he said he was drawing from this national. What is this ND?
Look, from my assessment, and I'll perhaps show my hand here a little bit. I've been speaking to various ANC insiders, various DA insiders, over the last couple of days. Quite the opposite of what you're saying seems to be playing out. That John Steenhuisen wants to stay in government. It is those leaders in the DA who are not in government that seemingly are more willing to pull out from government, like Helen Zille, for instance. I think Helen Zille has, to be very honest, and I think this is true for most of the DA's lifespan, Helen Zille has a better long view of politics than John Steenhuisen does. Helen Zille is not in government, and so she's not living off of the benefits and perks of being in government, and so she's more willing to pull out of it. John Steenhuisen loves being a minister. I don't know if you've seen him. The guy loves it. And I think he knows for himself, this is as good as it gets. He's at the peak of his political career. And I'm willing to, put my life to this. I don't think it's going to get any better for John Steenhuisen. I think he wants to get as much out of this experience. And I'm not saying he loves being in government for its own sake. I think he enjoys doing the work he does. Whether he's good or not is a different conversation and a different assessment. But I think he enjoys being in government. And I think he's the one who really doesn't want to pull out. Helen Zille is more willing to do so.
The problem with me with that is that had they put out, they would have given these ANC thieves now a lot of space to go and loot in broad daylight. Now they can't loot as much as they can because the TA is still there. Now Mr. Steenhuisen realized that after he had busted out, then he issued a statement a first statement like this ND, which to me is just a stodgy, soapy, a sophist of the ANC to appease the disgruntled voters of the ANC so that they can gyrate and dance and collapse when they wake up. It's a back to square one.
Yeah.
That's the problem with them.
Thanks for
Thank
that.
you.
Fana, appreciate it. Romeo in Pretoria. Romeo, good morning. Go for it.
Oliver, good morning, and SFM listeners. How are you this morning?
I'm fantastic, Romeo. Go for it. What's on your mind?
I'm okay, my brother. I just want to talk about something that we already know, based from what we see and what we already know about Burkina Faso being led by this young man.
Ooh, Romeo. I think Romeo's on the road, and so his line is cutting in and out. Let's see if we can get Romeo to maybe pull over to talk to us and get him back on the line. That's Romeo in Pretoria. Let's speak to Lala in Polokwane. Lala, good morning. Lala?
Hello?
Hi, go for it.
Morning, Oliver. Oliver, the issue with the president firing the deputy minister from DA, it's true that the president has all the powers to do that and does not have to give the reasons. However, there is a need for consistency. You will remember on the 8th of April 2020, Stella Ndabeni, who contravened the COVID-19 lockdown regulations.
Yeah.
She was only suspended for 1 month. So she lost her 1 month salary. In the same year, around the 22nd of September, Minister of Defense by then, during that time, was Madam Mapisa Ngakula. She gave a lift for the ANC officials using the FAA flight to Zimbabwe. She only lost her 3 months' salary. She was not fired. So both of them were the ANC members. So maybe I somehow agree with those who are saying there is no valid reason for the president to fire the deputy minister because the history shows that if people have violated the rules or undermined some of the parliamentary or the government rules, they can be suspended for a month or for 3 months. So why didn't the president do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, that's a fair question, Ala. I think that's a very, very fair question. I think it's incumbent on the president to make the argument why this transgression is so egregious that it warrants firing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because at the time you could have argued that Stella Ndabeni's violation and transgression of the COVID-19 regulations while being a minister was egregious enough to warrant a firing, right? Similarly, I mean, there are many examples we can point to. I think there's merit to the Democratic Alliance saying, we don't think the president is exercising an even-handed approach to disciplining those in his cabinet.
Maybe he looks on the color of the T-shirt of the person who transgressed the regulations. So that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Oliver.
Thank you very much, Lala. I appreciate your call. Let's speak to Sydney out in Aikenhook. Sydney, good morning.
Good morning, Brother Oliver. I'm Sydney, the level in Aikenhook, Bushbuck Ridge.
Yes,
Brother Oliver. Yes, 2 weeks ago we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the Constitutional Court. Yes.
Yeah.
But then I was starting this way. If I had money, if I was money, I would put it on the table and challenge the decision or the ruling they arrived at that saying this words, killing the farmer, is a chant. It's just a political chant. I would argue with them, and I would even, on my own, not even put or send a legal representative to send on my behalf in the witness stand. I would stand in the box myself to argue with the Constitutional Court to say that ruling, it is not building us as South Africans. And we must remember, we are a nation coming from another dispensation, which may be the song, of course, was fit at that time before 1994, because in a battle, in a war, there's no formula. You just do whatever you can, including singing songs in that way. But the dispensation we are in now as South Africans, 2025, you can say killing the farmer is a chant. It is not a chant. It's a sedition to kill people who happen to be farmers. And taking it from the previous dispensation who are white. I'm against that. We don't need that. We can't be a nation inciting farmers. We can't be a nation, after when we've eaten, we stand on the top of the hill and say, let's kill the farmers. The people will ensure food security in our country. We cannot do that.
Yeah.
So the Constitutional Court must review this one. They are not building us. Instead, they are tearing us apart as South Africans. They are beginning with us here, brother Oliver.
So certainly I hear you, but I do have a question. The adjudication around what speech constitutes insightful speech doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it certainly doesn't happen without empiricism attached to it. That is to say, to prove that it was incitement, there must have been inciting that followed it. That is to say, if I say to somebody, hey guys, Sydney is a sellout, come and kill Sydney. And if Sydney does then get attacked, even if you're not killed, we can prove that my speech was insightful. I'll take you back to an example of where insightful speech was well demonstrated in South Africa. Many years ago, I can't remember the exact year, King Zwelithini at the time had in Durban at a gathering had said these foreign nationals must go. Immediately thereafter, there was an outbreak of attacks on foreign nationals in KZN.
Yes.
That is an example of insightful speech.
Yes.
When someone says and chants, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, and it happens at a political rally, and people, once the rally is over, people go home, no farmer gets killed on the basis of that. That mob doesn't take that energy and attack the nearest farm and kills anybody or everybody who's white across them. You can't then say it's insightful. The evidence doesn't substantiate the point you're making. Like I said, incitement has to have empiricism attached to it.
Surely, brother Oliver, we can't say simply because people are not going out and butcher farmers directly, then it's okay. The fact that you are mocking, insulting, even if it's not physically happening in the field, that is just not good. Unfortunately, in our country, sporadically, here and there, we do hear some killings. Even on that Friday, where they were celebrating their 30 years, I heard it right on radio, 2 farmers were killed elsewhere. So, you can't...
Look, and then again, you have to draw the link. You can't just make the claim, right? The evidentiary burden that the Constitutional Court relies on, based on our jurisprudence, is quite clear. That you must be able to demonstrate that it was incitement, rather than just asserting it.
I hear you, brother Oliver. Hear you. But
Look,
sorry,
I think the subtext of what you're saying. I think there's great merit to it. I think there must be a time where we ask ourselves: does this type of political speech have a place in our democratic dispensation? And I think you saying no. Then I think that's a fair answer. But I think when it comes to your critique of how the Constitutional Court adjudicated it, I think you're wrong there, because the burden of proof and the threshold there for legal adjudication is much higher than a normative democratic question of, is this a good or a bad thing for our society?
But anyway, I do challenge them to go and review this and bring an outcome which constructs us with build the nation. But as it stands now, others, it's a leverage to them to stand there and sing and insult people who happen to be farmers. And we don't need that in our country. But South Africa, of today, 2025, we don't need that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your call, Sydney. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's Sydney calling us there from Acornhoek. We're going to take Freedom in London on the other side of the news headlines.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, 2 former Transnet executives are expected to appear in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court in Ekurhuleni this morning after handing themselves over to police. The appearance is linked to the multi-million rand locomotive tender. A 40-year-old man arrested in connection with the killing of his 87-year-old mother in Limpopo is this morning expected to make his first appearance at the Seshego Magistrates Court. And Canada has announced the scrapping of a digital services tax hours before it was due to take effect. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Can one word unlock eternal glory? Okay, maybe just a shiny trophy and bragging rights. It's Password US, hosted by the king of chaos himself, Jimmy Fallon. Celebrities try to guess words. Hilarity ensues. Logic? Optional. Laughter guaranteed. Password US, where saying the right word might win the game, but saying the wrong one is way more fun. Password US, Saturdays 7:30 on S3. Say it like you mean it, or don't. We're not judging.
Tani Esther, or should I say the Tupperware Tani? How's business going?
Business is booming. I've been operating out of the boot of my car for 10 years, but shame, it couldn't keep up with my growing empire.
Okay, so you sold it to We Buy Cars?
Yes, quick. Sold my old one, bought a bigger one. I even sold some of my Tupperware to the friendly guy who picked up my car.
Stick to what you know best, eh, Tani?
Excuse me?
Never mind. We Buy Cars. Geared for your business, geared for you.
The citizens and the believers are in a high-level clash of emotions. Drama meets tension. The fight for 3 points is real. This is the PSL Promotional Playoffs. Catch the thrilling encounter between Cape Town City and Cashrick Stars this Monday, 30 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC2. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
25 minutes to 10 o'clock. This is the open line. What is on your mind this morning? I'd love to hear from you. I got a tweet here from Gupebu, who says to me, I am on week 2 with this flu. Started on the Wednesday after Youth Day, and my throat was back to being sore over the weekend. The throat's better today, but the wet coughs are back. I don't recall ever having flu for this long before. Same year. Oh my goodness, this seasonal flu, my goodness, it has really done a number on us. Did you watch the rugby over the weekend, by the way? Springboks versus the Barbarians, the Barber Black Sheep. My goodness. I mean, the Springboks weren't the neatest on the day, but that scoreline reflects, I think, a really, really dangerous set of players. Wow. I'm excited for what the Springboks are going to be doing this season, particularly because we saw so many new players make it onto the field. Vincent Chituka, on his debut, 2 tries. Can you believe that? 25 years old, making it on the squad, and just, Sharks player, based in Durban, went to Northcliffe High. But my goodness, what a game. I mean, they really weren't the neatest. You could see that start of the season jitters. You could see that start of the season sloppiness. Of course, by the time we get to week 3, week 4 of the match calendar, we'll see an entirely different pack. Maybe, I guess. I think the coaches clearly have made it clear they intend on giving a lot of players opportunities. A lot of new players will be marching onto the field, running onto the field over the next couple of weeks. I'm assuming against Italy and against Italy 1, Italy 2. Italy 1 taking place at Loftus, Italy 2 taking place in Gqeberha. By the way, I'll be at the Gqeberha game against Italy. Looking forward to that. But what were your thoughts about the rugby over the weekend? I'd love to hear from you. 086 000 2032. Freedom out in East London. Freedom, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Oliver. Thank you to take my call. I'm phoning from East London, and then I'm phoning against violence. I don't know why it's like we're punished here in Eastern Cape for voting ANC, because the way the crime is happening, the way, when they're raping repeatedly old women, and you call that GBV, when we're killing white farmers every day, and then we call it genocide. When the taxi drivers are stopping us and taking our cars with extortion, demanding money, and strip it off if you don't pay those 6,000. The guys who come from Santago. You see, when you see these stories every day here in Eastern Cape, you ask yourself, is it because you are under is it because you voted for the ANC? Maybe the punishment from, I don't know, from the one above. You don't get it. You see, last week in Shortly, Mr. Oliver, there is a guy, maybe you know it, called Bishop. He have hundreds of taxis. He have been murdered. Now we have the Gaps and the Queen Annas. Those are taxi owners from Santago. The way they treat the people, the black people, the white farmers, you can't believe it. These guys, they have their private security. They call it the Gap security. You see, they always carry the gun like they are in Iran. You see, and they are against the civilians, they're against the people. You stop your car, you give maybe your family or a friend a lift, your car, you're going to lose it. Even in front of the police, which, for example, if you can try to vote 10-111, and to call 10-111, that number doesn't exist. And here in Eastern Cape, you must imagine that the taxi, the police stations, they're very, very far, about 20 to 50 kilometers away. You see. So, and then I don't get it, why we tolerate so much, or it's because we love it. And I thought that when this guy and Trump met, they will discuss this thing, how they can intervene in the crime situation in Eastern Cape. Because the people that are been killed, murdered, I mean, how can you rape your children over and over, and then there is nothing? You cannot even go maybe and be reported in tension, so that it can be in the statistics to say that no, in Eastern Cape today the people who have been murdered, maybe they are 50 or 100. You cannot do. I'm working in the Department of Health. The chaos that you see there is unbelievable, and you're like, why, man? The people, black people, are tolerating this thing. Why it will be until when? Because I thought when they go to New York, to White House to speak about crime rates in South Africa, in Eastern Cape, something will be done. Maybe there will be soldiers that will come. No. We need to speak about Iran. We need to speak about Israel. We need to speak about places that will never been there. That will never even have. Even if you're a black, you go to Iran or even in Israel, you cannot even be welcome to those places. And then why in our mind we preoccupied with the place instead of coming to Eastern Cape and help the crime in Eastern Cape and go? I found it mostly each and every day because of the chaos that I see from the department. That how come? How we tolerate this to happen? Why we cannot just open 10-111 so that if maybe there's a rape, the police, they can write it, okay, that they were reported a rape here. If maybe there's a murder, they can, so that we can be in the statistics, we can know just the numbers, that how many black people or the Xhosa people are dying each and every minute in Eastern Cape. Now it's like we take it under the carpet. It's like no one cares. Oh, Freedom is going to speak. Well, I'm going to phone again. Maybe I will phone tomorrow again and speak the same thing. But unfortunately, nothing is going to happen.
Freedom, I appreciate
no one will
you.
Take it.
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
I hear your frustration, I hear your anger, and I appreciate it. I think it's well placed, and importantly, and I think it's okay for you to continuously inscribe it in exactly the same way into the national conversation, so that people don't forget about it, don't turn away from it, and certainly don't ignore the conversation. So thank you much for that, Freedom. I really do appreciate it. Mike Newlands, I'll be coming to you next. Let's have a listen at these WhatsApp voice notes.
Good morning, Oliver Dixon. This is Vay from Mohale City in Krugersdorp. Oliver, I want to respond to the guy who called in and talked to Tula Sizwe that all the journalists, or some of the journalists and presenters of SABC, they are all the cabal of ANC. He is wrong. He is wrong. I know of many presenters and journalists who ended up in hot water for asking critical questions to ANC office bearers when they interview them. He is totally wrong. Thank you.
I'll tell you a little bit of a secret. A while back, a few weeks ago actually, I had interviewed Mahlengi, who is the national spokesperson of the ANC. And she felt that I was unfair in the conversation because I insisted on calling the government that we have a coalition government. And she insisted it's not a coalition government, it's a government of national unity. And I said the idea of a government of national unity has no constitutional expression. So when I'm speaking about it at a technical level, it is a coalition government. The Constitution recognizes coalition governments as an arrangement of government, which is what we have. We had a back and forth about it, which really was superfluous at best. And she thought I was unfair, and afterwards went and complained to my bosses and her team, that at least, almost threatening that they would never take an interview with me again. So I can tell you safely, the ANC is very unhappy with me. Many of them don't take interviews with me. Many of them don't want to speak to me. So I'd love to know how myself or Tulas are ANC lackeys. In fact, on the way out, Tulas was quite amused by that call. He called me an ANC lackey.
Good morning, Oliver, the good listeners of SFM. Well, the blue lights are so nice, That is why the DA members of cabinet who were against the blue lights before they went to the cabinet, they cannot afford to go out of the same cabinet because they will lose the blue lights. They made empty threats to say they will leave GNU. They gave President Ramaphosa some deadline of 48 hours. But when they thought of losing the blue lights, they decided to be silent so that they can continue enjoying the blue lights. Thanks. Stephen Matsimela from Soshanguve. Bye.
Thank you very much for that, Stephen. Really do appreciate it. Let's have a listen at this WhatsApp voice note.
Morning, Oliver. Oliver, pertaining this one party taking decision for the country, I don't think it's right. They mustn't decide alone in that GNU. They must consider views of other parties, like the decision taken by President. If it's the Constitution that mandates him to do things as usual in his duties, it has to be debated or changed. It's not business as usual in GNU. Every decision must be put among parties in government who are no longer decided by the Luthuli House, where the country used to be governed. For that matter, plus 16 million voters out of 63 million voters is not the majority, according to the same constitution. 50 or 50 plus is the majority, so no parties get that in 2024. Since when is the 16% they say in parliament has become the majority?
Good morning, Oliver. Hope you get better soon, but you also need to rest. I don't believe you get enough rest because you are quite a busy man. However, has one ever seen, even if you don't like the DA, one can say, I don't care for the DA, but have you ever seen Ramaphosa act this boldly with any of the ANC looters? He's never fired any of them. They just get sent to the Integrity Committee where they are cleared. Integrity Committee is, they're all one and the same. So he's never been this bold. So it gives him a kick to do that to the DA. Teresa, Cape Town.
Teresa, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it, Teresa. I try to rest as much as I can. Trust and believe me, I really do try. If my memory serves me well, I do think this is the first time since Ramaphosa came into power in 2018, February, that he has fired anyone from the executive. I think this might actually be the first time. Mike in Newlands, you want to talk about Starlink. Good morning.
Good morning, Oliver. But before I do that, permission to have a brief comment on your previous caller.
Mike, very tight on time, so maybe
Okay,
to your point on Starlink.
Very good. I just want to say there's a delicious irony sitting at the moment with our government. Park Towers, the minister in charge, Starlink have come to South Africa, or they want to come to South Africa, as you know. They pretty much blanketed most of South Africa already. The problem is that our government wants 30% of Starlink's money, which according to Professor Khomedi will probably ultimately end up around about R1 trillion. So what Starlink have done is they've come to the government and said, look, tell you what, guys, we can't give you 30%. It's not going to happen. But what we will do is we will give you $27.6 million US. We will go to 5,000 rural schools, and we will put in systems which will benefit about 2.4 million rural school children. We will supply all the equipment for free. We will insist that the equipment is installed by South African-only technicians, and we will also pay for the high-speed connection. That is what we will do for you. We will revolutionize rural schooling. Now, as you know, we're probably the worst schooling system in the world, certainly in terms of maths and all those horrible statistics. We are the stupidest country in the world in terms of our poor children. So this delicious offer sits now on Park Star's desk. Now, if Park Star says, now, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take the money, obviously Starlink are going to pull out. And if he says, no, I'm going to actually benefit our own people and our own children for a change, so I'm going to let them go ahead with their offer and I'm not going to impose BEE on them, that is a decision that he's faced. And if he does that, then that happily would be the end of BEE and our country might be able to attract further investment. So I wanted to just put that on the table. It hasn't been discussed much at all on the radio. In fact,
Yeah, but that's also because they made the offer only 5 days ago, after the fact, by the way, of the signing of the equity equivalent policy directive by Solly Malatsi, not before the fact. So let's not pretend Starlink is being benevolent here, because that's certainly not the case. Right? But importantly here is that the equity equivalent program allows for them to do that. But to say 24 point whatever million US dollars against what would have been the equity equivalent it falls very short of what the equity equivalent is, by the way.
Yes, but the equity equivalent would have gone straight into Loot Freely House and we would never ever see that money.
What the equity equivalent says is that, we invite you to spend on social programs, to build schools, to fix schools, to do whatever is necessary to improve South African society, but it must be the equivalent of what would have been the equity shareholding of a black beneficiary organization in South Africa. You can't just thumbsuck a number and think just because it sounds like a lot, we will accept it. It must be an equity equivalent. And even then, Starlink still seems to not want to adhere to South Africa's policy directive. Why should we bend the rules for Starlink when Amazon, by the way, their competitors, are willing to adhere to the rules?
Yes, indeed. Indeed. I absolutely. So that is the delicious irony of it is. Are our school children going to suffer because we put laws in place?
Our school children are not going to suffer because of laws. Our school children will fall under an entirely different administration at all. I don't think we must emotionally blackmail South Africans into thinking we must accept anything and everything that comes our way, no matter how big or small it is. Again, you're missing the point. Starlink seems to not want to play by the rules, but their competitors in South Africa, Amazon, which also has, by the way, low-orbiting satellites and want to operate low-orbiting satellites in South Africa, have been playing by the rules. And by the way, I did inquire this. When I spoke to Solly Malatsi, the Minister of Digital Communications, my question was quite clear. Have you had a meeting with Starlink? And he said no. And I said, which low-orbit satellite organization have you had a meeting with? And he said, Amazon, as far back, by the way, as last year. So Amazon has been doing the work. Starlink has not even submitted an application for a license to operate. I don't know why we're entertaining them when they clearly haven't even done the first step. Whereas Amazon is doing the actual work. They've submitted an application. They're speaking to the regulators. They're speaking to the minister. And they're weighing up the options. Starlink seems to be, as Chris Brown used to say, why are you hating from outside of the club when you can't even get in?
Oliver, all I can say to this is, look, I don't know. We've run out of time to make these fancy decisions.
Thanks a lot for that. I do have to take a break, so thanks a lot for that, Mac. Appreciate it. Let's take a short break.
EFC is live this Thursday after months of talk.
And you got nothing, bro. Beat someone relevant, then come show me what you got.
The middleweight division's biggest rivalry comes to a dramatic conclusion.
Massive drama here at the main event of EFC. Never seen anything like it. This crowd.
It's Luke Michael versus Shadrach Nsua for the middleweight title, EFC 125. Live from the World Sports Betting Arena this Thursday, July 3rd. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, so what then is the ultimatum?
The ultimatum is that the president must swipe in front of his own door because there's a lot of dirt in front of his own door. In the ANC, we've got ministers there that has been implicated in the Zondo Commission report, ministers that are implicated in fraud and corruption charges. So the DA's demand or ultimatum is that the president must fire the people in his own cabinet that face charges like this, people with the like of Simelane and Nchaveni.
DA's national spokesperson, Billy Ocampo.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. Find the podcast at safm.co.za. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Dixon. This is Iseko Anthony Peter from Orange Farm. I want to talk about the high price of Eskom. People, they cannot afford electricity now because the price of Eskom is too high. And again, in Orange Farm, there's no train from Vereeniging via Grasmere to Johannesburg. People, they take on taxis. And the price of taxis is very high. People, they cannot afford it. I don't know why the PRASA, they don't finish to bring back the trains, because really people, they cannot afford it. And it's unfair to the people of Val to not have trains running while other places, they've got the trains are running. Thank you very much. This is Seko.
Oliver, 2024 elections, DA wanted to replace a corrupt ANC government. After the elections, they didn't win. They joined the same corrupt government. They stopped singing about the corruption of ANC. Now grapes are starting to turn sour now. They want to start singing the same song they used to sing before the elections. A parrot will never stop being a parrot. No matter how you want to clip it, it will still use foul language. They are going back to their old tricks now. We must not be fooled by DA. They can't run a parallel government in South Africa. Norman from Brixton.
Norman, thank you so much for that. Let's speak to Solomon out in Heidelberg. Solomon, good morning.
Ntate, how are you?
Ntate,
man, and I'm asking your help. But Oliver, I'm staying in this municipality in Heidelberg. The Ward is Ward 10, Jimson Park. The place they call it Jimson Park. The councillor there is for DA. I was having electricity in my house. They come to put a paving there to fix the street.
Yeah.
Now the contractor people, they cut my electricity cable. I go to municipality and phone them. I reported that my cable has been cut off. They send one of their technician there. Their technician says, no, the contractor guys, their responsibility. I have to speak to the contractor guys. They must fix it. Then those people, they come with a different cable. They place it there, but it was normally working. The other day, the contractor guy, they said I must look for a technician who will fix it, and then they can pay it for me. That guy who fixed that cable.
Yeah.
It's not a municipality.
Yeah, you shouldn't carry the burden and cost of getting that thing repaired.
Yeah, so I try everything, but they refuse to do that. Then the contractor guys send their technician, they just bypass the electricity.
Yeah.
My pet, that one I put their numbers for electricity is not working. I report it to municipality, even the council. I put it in the group. I put it in the WhatsApp group. Everyone knows my story in Jimmy Park.
Yeah.
It takes three years. Every time when somebody is reporting the fault of electricity, I put my message there, I've got still problem. They never come. After now, they send other contract guy, they give him a contract that people, they said it's underlog. I don't know what the name for that people. They come to disconnect all the people who are using electricity without buying it. Then they came to my house, they said they have sent them that they must come and disconnect the electricity. I said the councillor is also knowing I've got this problem for past 2 years.
Yeah.
They said I must pay 47,000 rand. They fine me because I put the electricity illegal. I sent my wife there. They tell my wife that we must pay that 47. I go myself there. When they see they are wrong about they never come there, they say now I must pay 15,000 because I was having electricity but not buying it. I said that is why I was coming there and reporting because I can't put money every month for electricity. If I don't have money that month, I will stay without electricity. It's fine.
Look, Solomon, again, your story is very harrowing. I'm going to put you back to Lebu, and hopefully the team can look into this on the municipal watch and get in contact with the municipal manager and the mayor so that we can see why it is that they're not fixing this, because I do think you don't deserve to be able to sit through this without any help. Thanks for that. Really do appreciate it.
Good morning, Oliver. Oliver, thank you very much for paralyzing Mike from Cape Town for his false narrative that he always comes on the radio. I think you challenged him very well. I like what you did. Thank you very much. And do it more and more. Thank you.
I don't think it's a false narrative. I just think it's an incorrect assessment of the data points. False narrative seems to be quite more deliberate and misleading than just looking at things with a limited perspective. Godfrey in Doornpoort, you're our last caller. Go for it.
Morning, Oliver, to your listeners and to your team. Hey, I've got a lot to report, but I'll just try to be short.
Yeah, please. We actually have only about 30 seconds. Yeah.
Back to the producers, then I can talk tomorrow. But let me deal with what for now. The HPCSA, I'm experiencing injustice. I've lodged a complaint, and then my complaint is supposed to be set down for appeal. And then the last time I wrote a letter to Mr. Sipeng, he promised my appeal will be dealt with in June.
Yeah.
Today is the last day of June. And then he responded to the email because I wrote that email to the portfolio portfolio committee on health. That is why he responded to lie to say my matter will be dealt with in June because I think he was mitigating.
Yeah.
So today is the last day of June. I think all these institutions, the HPCSA, South African Human Rights Commission, and the Equality Court, they are covering up for the Reserve Bank. I've been experiencing injustice for quite a long time.
Yeah. Look, like you said, I do encourage you maybe to speak to the team. So I'm going to put you back to them and do call in again. So when you have a little bit more time, you can lay out the facts and context for us so that we can understand a little bit better. But I want to thank you for your call. I appreciate it, Godfrey. Godfrey calling us there from Doornpoort. It's 10 o'clock and Musa has your latest news bulletin.
Thanks, Oliver. In our top stories, 2 former Transnet executives to appear in court and suspects in Kamogelo Baukudi's kidnap case to appear in court. Good morning. 2 former Transnet executives are expected to appear in the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court sitting in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court in Ekurhuleni today. They handed themselves over at a police station south of Johannesburg this morning. The appearance is linked to an alleged fraudulent 93 million rand locomotive tender. The following story contains graphic information which may upset sensitive listeners, including children. A 40-year-old man arrested in connection with the killing of his 87-year-old mother Ed Saboro village in Limpopo is this morning expected to make his first appearance at the Seshego Magistrates Court. Police spokesperson Malisela Lidwaba says the suspect allegedly hacked his mother to death and dismembered her body. The motive for the killing is not known at this stage. Lidwaba says the suspect will face a murder charge.
It was discovered that the woman was actually killed and dismembered, and then the parts put in the buckets. So as a result, he was immediately arrested. So he will be appearing before Seshego Magistrate Court on Monday to face charge of murder. Our Provincial Commissioner, Lieutenant General Thembi Hadebe, condemned this incident in the strongest possible terms. She also made an appeal to our communities to always come forward with any information if they see any sign of potential GBV-related incidents in order to avoid situations of this nature.
5 men are expected to appear in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court in the Free State today in connection with the abduction of 19-year-old Kamogelo Baukudi on the 5th of this month. The grade 11 learner from Marti du Plessis Special School was kidnapped while being driven home from school in Bloemfontein. He was found alive in the early hours of Friday morning in Wippenaar, over 100 kilometers from Bloemfontein. Johannesburg Metro Bus says the newly introduced payment system will enable commuters to pay only for the distance they've travelled. This is in reaction to the planned march by commuters to Metro Bus offices in Braamfontein to protest against the system. Commuters say the new tap-in, tap-out payment system makes travelling expensive. Commuters are picketing at Gandhi Square in the Johannesburg CBD over the system that's expected to start from tomorrow. They say they were not properly consulted, but Metrobus spokesperson Tsepo Nathan disagrees.
So, as we have always done with our commuters, we have always engaged. We have given ample notice. I think it was just over 30 days of notice as to what we will be doing going forward. We think that the system that we're introducing is a system that will ensure equity, that will ensure that people pay for the services that they actually consume so that we can improve the service that we give to our people. The old system was quite unfair because it did not charge people for the distance that they have traveled. Now we are saying there needs to be equity among everybody that uses our services so that everybody pays for the services that they consume.
Further afield, and finally, Canada has announced the scrapping of a digital services tax hours before it was due to take effect. On Friday, U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to end trade talks with Ottawa and impose new tariffs because of the planned tax. The BBC's Ian McWilliam has the details.
The Canadian Department of Finance said in a statement that the digital services tax would be rescinded in anticipation of a comprehensive trade arrangement with the United States. The planned tax would have hit major U.S. tech companies, including Amazon, Meta and Apple. Ottawa said it was introduced because large technology companies operating in Canada would otherwise not pay tax on revenues generated there. President Trump's threatened new tariffs, however, would have thrown U.S.-Canada trade into chaos again after months of relative calm.
Recapping the top story, 2 former Transnet executives are expected to appear in the Palm Ridge Court in Ekurhuleni this morning after handing themselves over to police. Their appearance is linked to the multi-million rand locomotive tender. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
What if you open your night to culture? Try new things and make space for new voices, new stories, and new perspectives. Open up your Saturday night with world-class entertainment, reality TV, and drama from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Winter in Nelson Mandela Bay is for getting out and not staying in. Get outdoors on a green flag hiking trail or go for a game drive at one of 15 private reserves right at our doorstep. Hit the beach or get on board with a whale watching cruise. Explore the historical hearts of our city or come vibe with the locals on a township tour. There's so much to discover. Find Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa on Facebook or visit nmbt.co.za. Nelson Mandela Bay, your winter and our summer destination.
A stage awaits, not for applause, but for possibility. For over 40 years, Standard Bank has championed the arts, and at the National Arts Festival, we don't just watch talent rise, we help grow it. Through our Standard Bank Young Artist Winners, raw voices find power, unseen stories take the spotlight, and what begins as a dream grows into a legacy. Join us in Makanda for the festival. Standard Bank, proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.2 FM in East London.
You are listening to Oliver Dixon on SAFM.
The Talking Point on SAFM. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It is 8 minutes after 10 o'clock. Good morning, and thank you so much for being with us. This is The Talking Point. My name is Oliver Dixon. In this hour, we're going to be talking about what had transpired last week, and that was the firing of Andrew Whitfield. Our guest this morning, political analyst, Professor Susan Boysens, will be with us. Before we get into the conversation, let's maybe lay out the facts for what they are. Because I have realized, and even as I was listening to Tulas' show, I realized that some people don't know the facts and the chronology that it had transpired with. And I think the facts matter for us to have a meaningful and accurate conversation. And then there are some facts which seemingly aren't in the public domain that I'll share, which through engagements with different political actors I'd come to learn about, who were in and around what had unfolded. In 2023, relations between South Africa and much earlier than 2023 actually, but in 2023 relations between South Africa and the US had begun to sour. This was after South Africa had abstained from the Russia-Ukraine vote in the General Assembly of the United Nations. And of course, the US was lobbying for South Africa's vote there. South Africa chose not to vote to condemn Russia. And then later on, the US had accused, through Ambassador Reuben Brickety, they had chose to accuse South Africa of having sold and supplied arms to Russia that were transported to Russia when the ship Lady R had docked in Simonstown. And of course, the U.S. provided no evidence of that, and the South African delegation, South African administration, the president had put together some form of inquiry, as he typically does, to look into it, and again, no evidence was found to that effect. But relations didn't get any better. They got worsened as, once again, the Trump administration began, before they even got into power, once again began to start trumpeting the idea that there's a white genocide in South Africa, and that they can't do business with South Africa, and AGOA began to be on the line. AGOA was already precarious during the tail end of the Biden administration, but with Trump coming in, it seemed that AGOA was on the precipice of implosion, really, or that South Africa was on the precipice of being removed from AGOA. There was a lot of panic in the country. 600,000 jobs are being created by American businesses in South Africa that benefit from a non-reciprocal free tariff arrangement. And so the government then figured out how it is that they can begin to engage the Trump administration The government struggled to make contact with the Trump administration during its transition period. The handover office that was set up towards from about December to January. He spoke with all world leaders except South Africa couldn't get through, and eventually was able to have an off-the-cuff conversation made possible through, once again at the time, Johan Rupert. Eventually, Trump came into office, and the temperature was raised on this question of AGOA. We thought we were going to lose it. Business had put together, organized business in South Africa had put together a lobby delegation of their own to go to Washington to speak to as many people as they can on the Capitol Hill. And the Democratic Alliance had too decided to put together in February last year a delegation of their own to go to Capitol Hill to speak to whoever they had access to, whether congressional or senatorial access, to speak to them, or those who have the ears of senators and congressmen and women on Capitol Hill. It was President Ramaphosa then found out about this delegation and had strongly reprimanded the Democratic Alliance from doing this. Well, gently reprimanded the Democratic Alliance from doing this. At the time, you'd recall a statement was put out after the DA had announced this. And the statement was put out first by the ANC to say, let government do what government is supposed to do. Let's not politicize this. So different political movements shouldn't interfere and send their own delegations. Let this be coordinated through government. Despite the Democratic Alliance being in government, they didn't believe government was moving with the requisite speed or haste, and they didn't believe that government was well equipped or well connected to be able to do this. They felt that for some reason their context on Capitol Hill was a lot better and a lot stronger, and perhaps they could do more and had agility. And so, in fact, the Democratic Alliance had sort of framed it in a way that they're going to support the work government is intending to do rather than let government do it. The president gently said, please, guys, just don't do it. However, though, Minister Andrew Whitfield, erstwhile Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield, who was requested by his party, the Democratic Alliance, to be a part of this delegation, specifically because he's inside of the Department of Trade, has an understanding of the trade environment, which could lend itself useful to this delegation, was then enlisted by his party to participate in this. He had 10 days before this trip submitted a request for travel to the president, and the practice in cabinet is that a request must come in 14 days before the intended travel. Andrew had, after 10 days, decided, he's not hearing back from the president, he's going to go in any case. And so he decided to go. Didn't wait for 14 days. He decided, I'm going. And so he went without the president's permission. I had engaged several political actors in and around the story, and I had learned that the Democratic Alliance had also enlisted Minister Dion George to also participate. Dion George, following the president's reprimand, had told the party he was not comfortable to participate in this delegation, and he subsequently didn't. Dion George did not go when his party had initially asked him to go because he felt that the president, who expressed his displeasure with this, said don't do it. And so Dion George, also a member of the Democratic Alliance, also a minister coming from the Democratic Alliance, chose not to. Andrew Whitfield chose to go. And that, I think, is an interesting distinction in how the party or certain specific party members chose to do this. Andrew didn't have to go, but he chose to go nonetheless. He went, and when he came back, he had issued an apology to the president, and wrote a letter to the president for apologizing for having transgressed. And so in that instance, the president, I guess the president spent all these months considering it. There is a question around timing. He was then fired, specifically for that. And so, a number of questions here. Has the president acted hastily, or was the president perhaps doing too much in this? Could he have reprimanded Andrew Whitfield short of firing him in a way that would have restored respect by ministers in cabinet? Right? Was it a fair firing? Was there a different means of resolving this? The president didn't give Andrew Whitfield or the Democratic Alliance an opportunity to appeal what would ultimately become his decision. the president informed John Steenhuisen before he fired Andrew Whitfield that he intends to fire Andrew Whitfield. John Steenhuisen then had asked for some time to go back to consult with the leadership of the Democratic Alliance. Importantly as well, John Steenhuisen was then instructed by the president to provide a new name. He said, the party's not losing the position. Andrew's just not going to be in the position. Give me another name. So the Democratic Alliance had to put forward another name. And instead of putting forward another name immediately, the Democratic Alliance chose to protest this by saying, not that Andrew Whitfield transgressed, but rather that what he did was not so serious. When there are more serious things happening in government, when there are ministers who are transgressing more seriously and substantively in government and they're not being fired. And they may well be right about that. The Democratic Alliance then went on to threaten to walk out of the coalition. The president said nothing. They gave him a 48-hour ultimatum and he said, I'm not going to bend to and acquiesce to your threats. And the Democratic Alliance subsequently did not leave the government of national unity. And I guess they had to demonstrate some level of anger and find some reprieve to this. And they said, well, we're going to withdraw from the national dialogue, which is also quite silly, by the way, because the national dialogue hasn't even started. And I mean, the party can withdraw from it. I'm not sure that the party withdrawing from it means that whoever their ministers or their government officials are can withdraw from it. Because if the president instructs a certain minister to do something in relation to the government, to the national dialogue, and they choose not to do so, that would be insubordination, right? And that would also, I guess, in the mind of Cyril Ramaphosa now, warrant firing. If my memory serves me well, like I said earlier, this might be the first firing from the executive President Ramaphosa has done since he came into power in 2018. We've had several resignations under him. The first was Nhlanhla Nene. The second was Malusi Gigaba, that I remember. But we haven't seen him fire anyone just yet. And here he had fired someone. There's precedent for that, where we've seen President Thabo Mbeki fire a deputy minister for exactly the same thing, for going on an international trip that the president had not approved, and he removed that deputy minister from his cabinet. Similarly, it was brought to my attention, by the way, that President Jacob Zuma had also expressed incredible displeasement with then Minister Thoko Didiza for having gone on an international visit without getting the approval from the president. But he didn't fire her. Similarly, Nelson Mandela had fired Winnie Mandela for a very similar transgression, for exactly the same transgression, really. There's the sensitivity around, and this is what the conversation needs to be framed around, whether or not this transgression is so serious because it happened during a time of the president thinking through how he restores relations with the U.S., and that potentially the DA could have thwarted any of the efforts made by government at the time, whatever they may have been. And that is where I'll start my conversation with Professor Susan Booysens this morning. I'd love to hear your thoughts throughout this. Give me a call, 086 000 2032. We're going to take a short break. On the other side of this, we speak to Professor Susan Booysens.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bakkie to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
What if you open up more? Open up to learning and experiencing more of Mzansi and abroad? What if you open up culture and explore the extraordinary from music to drama and the latest fashion? What if you open up your wild side, discover a world of skyscraping cities and brown sugar beaches? What if you open up your kitchen and immerse yourself in cuisines from all corners of the world? What if you open up your voice with all eyes on you without being seen? What if you open up your morning to lekker conversations and world-class entertainment? What if you open up more?
Winter in Nelson Mandela Bay is for getting out and not staying in. Get outdoors on a green flag hiking trail or go for a game drive at one of 15 private reserves right at our doorstep. Hit the beach or get on board with a whale watching cruise. Explore the historical heart of our city or come vibe with the locals on a township tour. There's so much to discover. Find Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa on Facebook or visit nmbt.co.za. Nelson Mandela Bay, your winter and our summer destination.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
21 minutes after 10 o'clock, I'm in conversation with political analyst Professor Susan Booysens. Prof, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Welcome to the show. Did President Ramaphosa overreact in firing Andrew Whitfield?
Good morning, Oliver. Good to speak to you. It certainly raises questions, the timing of Ramaphosa's decision to do this firing of Andrew Whitfield, given that we have probably more than 4 months that have transpired in between from the act of having gone on this visit to this decision to fire him. And given that it is a totally loaded context in which this coalition operates, the DA should have been better aware, and Whitfield in particular, that it is a contested coalition terrain. As you mentioned earlier, the ANC itself at times denies that it is a coalition, and then to play into a field where the ANC takes as much power in the coalition situation, and the DA aspires to much more power than what the ANC is willing to give. And in this context, the parties, and especially the ANC, has been gathering ammunition because its own internal structures, the most important one, the National Executive Committee, is very divided on whether the ANC should be in this coalition or not. And the ANC, through the VAT division a few months ago, had proven that it can muster alternative parallel majorities and not just rely on the DA. So given that it is such a contested terrain, Ramaphosa's reaction was probably should have been expected sooner or later. It is not a neutral terrain. It is not just reason. It's emotion, party images, party prospects in future elections. All of this comes into the mix. And yes, one might see Ramaphosa's reaction as out of context, out of proportion, but given the loaded terrain in which it came, it was probably to be expected.
Let's assume all things equal, and let's put aside, for instance, the contentious context of the coalition arrangement. Evaluate for us whether or not firing Andrew Whitfield was sufficiently warranted by the scale of the transgression committed by Andrew Whitfield.
My first instinct there is that it should have been rather if it had been on the basis of the work that he did or maladministration in how he executed his job, not having done this particular work-related task, then I think it is stretching it. Because we haven't heard of any complaints. We know by other reports, typically are typical of deputy ministers, and particularly in this case too, where deputy minister comes from our opposition party, these deputy ministers are given as little as possible to do. We've also heard other reports that Whitfield has been making these have been reports from the DA in their statements that he's been doing good work in terms of checking on the probity of government actions, of allocations, etc. in the department. If we had heard anything from Cyril Ramaphosa in that context, that I think would have been very acceptable. But it is party political motivations that seem to come to the surface here.
Yeah. So on the one hand, President Cyril Ramaphosa could have reprimanded Andrew not having fired him, but he has now, and we have to now evaluate the response thereto. But is there now additional pressure on President Ramaphosa to act even-handedly across his cabinet? That is to say, to fire and or strongly reprimand other ministers, particularly from his own party, that transgress. Let's think about Minister Nkabane, for instance, the Minister of Higher Education, who seemingly is being very generous or very conservative with the truth and evading accountability in Parliament for how she had handled the board appointments for the various SETAs. Or if we think about any other minister that has seriously transgressed over the last couple of months, those even mentioned in the Zondo Commission of Inquiry report, Gwede Mantashe comes to mind as an example thereof. Is there now additional pressure on him to act against those ministers as well, to show that he's not being partisan in disciplining his cabinet and executive?
There should be more pressure on President Ramaphosa to do this, to do more, to give much more evidence that he is actually taking very seriously this task and his own undertakings, by the way, to act very seriously against corruption. But we know very well, and we hear lots of public arguments about this, that he has not been forthcoming in pulling through those actions. We know how divided the ANC is internally. We know that part of the peace that Cyril Ramaphosa has established following his ascension into power quite a few years ago by now, but following his expectations and undertakings at that time, so much more had been expected. But the peace that he has established and his dominance in the ANC at this particular moment is in relation to how he has accommodated those people. So the people that we are expecting that should also be acted again form part of a substantial core in the ANC of people who should be seeing action against them, should be suffering that action, and yet nothing is being done. So given that context of internal party politics and ANC politics, it would be unrealistic to expect that. But by the governance undertakings and understandings, definitely there should be much more that should be done. But that is very unlikely to happen. And it is in this context too that we see that the focus is instead being placed on a big narrative, and it's a narrative that ANC is building actually in a devious way quite impressively against the DA at this stage, of acting against the national interests, of insubordination of various fronts. And so it's instead of the action, instead of the pressure on Ramaphosa, we see that the narrative is being shifted.
Yeah. Give us a call. I'd love to hear from you. I'm in conversation with Professor Susan Booysens. 086-000-2032, 086-000-2032. Do you agree with Professor Susan Booysens that a firing of a cabinet minister or a member of the executive is warranted in the instance where you can substantially say that their performance in government is not up to standard and that they're not delivering on what they've been told and asked to deliver upon? Not a transgression falling outside of performance-based evaluators. So that is to say, going on a trip that was not approved by the president is not necessarily performance-related and shouldn't warrant a firing in that instance. Do you agree with that framing? I'd love to hear from you. 086-000-2032. I'd also want to hear your WhatsApp voice notes. We do have a number of those, and we're going to come to them very shortly on 0614-104-107. Tweet me at Oliver_speaking on Twitter and to Oliver Dixon on Facebook. I'd love to hear from you. It is 10:30, and Musa has your latest headlines.
Good morning. Thanks, Oliver. In the headlines, 2 former Transnet executives are expected to appear in the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court sitting in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court in Ekurhuleni today. They handed themselves over at a police station south of Johannesburg this morning. Disgruntled Metrobus commuters believe the pay-per-kilometre system will be expensive and unaffordable. Metrobus says the newly introduced payment system which comes into effect tomorrow, will see commuters pay only for the distance they've travelled. And US senators have been debating a contentious tax and spending bill late into the night. Democrats who are opposed to the legislation are trying to delay a final vote on the bill. I'll have details on these and other stories at 11.
Let's take a look at your markets at this hour. The rand is currently trading at 17 rand 77 cents to the dollar, 24 rand 33 cents to the pound, and 20 rand 84 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mixed at the closing bell. The JSE is higher in mid-morning trade, while markets in Europe have extended gains. Gold is trading at $3,295 and platinum at $1,367 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $67.70 a barrel.
Nelson Mandela once said, "There can be no greater gift than that of giving one's time and energy to helping others without expecting anything in return."
What's your Mandela Day game plan this year? Why not lace up those sneakers and hit the ground running at our annual Mandela Day Walk and Run on July 19th at the DP World Wanderers Stadium, Ilovo. You can walk 5Ks, run 10 and 21Ks, and still have enough energy to have fun. It's a whirlwind of fun and laughter, all for a fantastic cause. Every cent goes to support the excellent work of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Enter on mandeladay.com or register for the virtual race on funnation.org/Nelson Mandela. See you there.
EFC is live this Thursday after months of talk.
And you got nothing, bro. Beat someone relevant, then come show me what you got.
The middleweight division's biggest rivalry comes to a dramatic conclusion.
Massive drama here at the main event of EFC. Never seen anything like it. This crowd.
It's Luke Michael versus Shadrach Nsua for the middleweight title, EFC 125. Live from the World Sports Betting Arena this Thursday, July 3rd. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. This Youth Month, SAFM celebrates the spirit, power, and potential of young South Africans. Join us as we dive into conversations that matter, from innovation to education and skills for the changing world, empowering youth for meaningful economic participation. Because at SAFM, we're not just talking, we're leading the conversations that move us.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Oliver. This is Makwara Shinyazo from Thohoyandlo. You know what? If the DA think they are considering putting a motion of no confidence against the president, who do they think will replace him, or are they just making an empty threats as usual? And at the same time, this very same DA, they say they will not leave the GNU, but they say they are considering putting a motion of no confidence against the president. Who are they fooling here? You know, because we know that they will not even support the deputy president like Paul Mashatile. You know, no. I think that the DA are in self-destruction. They are already knocking on the door outside. They are getting out of the GNU, you know. And it looks like they will collide with the EFF and MK just to remove Ramaphosa.
Good morning, Oliver. I am here thinking that is it possible perhaps that the president relieved the deputy minister of his duties because perhaps the president is under the impression that he was one of the propagandists who who propagated that South Africa has a white genocide. I'm just thinking aloud here. Thank you.
Look, it was never a position of the Democratic Alliance that there's a white genocide taking place in the country, and I don't think Andrew Whitfield would, as a lone member, propagate such a narrative when the party he comes from doesn't hold that position either. So I don't think that's at all in play here. I'm in conversation with Professor Susan Boyson, so I'd like to hear from you as well. Prof, we now have to talk about whether or not the reaction by the Democratic Alliance was the correct reaction. They had two options. Either they say to the president, Mr. President, we understand it's your prerogative to hire and fire anyone you see fit in your cabinet, of course, along the principles of proportional representation in based on our signed agreement on the Government of National Unity Coalition. You extended to us the opportunity to present you a name to replace Andrew Whitfield. We'll do so, and then quietly walk away from it. They had that option, but they chose the option to protest the firing of Andrew Whitfield. Not only to protest it, but to go as far as saying, we will withdraw from the coalition if you don't reinstate him within 48 hours or fire an ANC minister within 48 hours, which seems to be a weird equivalence, but that notwithstanding, was that the right response?
It was certainly an exaggerated response, I would say. Again, it comes in a context of how this GNU coalition of South Africans is operating. The internal rules of this coalition has become, unfortunately, but that is the reality of this coalition. It has become that of contest, the ANC taking as much power, the DA doing everything to assert itself, to show its constituency that is actually making a difference and that it's the right thing to be there. So again, it's that context that makes such a big part of the answer here. The DA would probably never have been satisfied with just accepting and moving on. Also because I think objectively one can observe there are some discrepancies in terms of how long Cyril Ramaphosa has waited to respond, whether he should have had the courtesy of responding to the application, even if it was a few days late within that 10 days or 14 days period. I think he should have taken the courtesy to respond better, and I think much of these problems could have been avoided by then. But it is the case of the ANC really gathering ammunition against the DA in this situation, and the DA should have known that. And on the other hand, the DA is probably so frustrated being in this coalition where they feel they're not being given the justified power that they should have proportionately or consulted sufficiently. And it is probably in this case that in this context that they really blew their party political top in this situation and started piling on the threats, some empty threats that they had to step back on, the 48-hour deadline, and leaving the GNU quickly, which quickly got converted to objecting against departmental budgets and boycotting the national dialogue, which could be another contentious case. So they started piling on these pressures and even surfaced the one of emotional no confidence in Cyril Ramaphosa. And there your caller was absolutely correct. That really sounds like a step that the DA would take if it's absolutely sure that this coalition has failed. Because it is actually a very, very dysfunctional coalition, even if it offers that guaranteed majority in Parliament. Because the parties are not cooperating, it's not a sense of shared, even just government, not ideological, but government, coalition government identity that comes out of there. So it is very dysfunctional in that way. But neither the ANC nor the DA wishes to be seen to be stepping away from it. We know that in the ANC, and that's quite a humorous observation, that there is a approach of frustrate out or kick out the DA from the coalition. Much debate and friendly discussions internally in the ANC as to which of these should it be. And I think they're obviously trying to do the frustrate out the DA so that the DA leaves of its own accord. But by all indications, the DA seems to be clinging
do you calculate
to
that?
this position.
Do you calculate that to be the intention of President Ramaphosa, to frustrate the DA to leave the coalition?
I think it plays into that project of much of the ANC to do that. Given that Ramaphosa has waited such a long time to come out with a step, and given that there is an NEC meeting pending, one which the ANC, Sir Ramaphosa, has been trying to avoid, also even because in the top 7 of the ANC, there is no consensus as to how to approach the matter. And so given the timing of this, I think we should definitely become wiser if we see it in that context.
Yeah. Give us that call, 086 000 2032. Before I go to the Alliance, Prof. Boysons, I want you perhaps to pontificate upon this for us. Has the Democratic Alliance weakened themselves by making a threat they were unable to follow through on?
In principle, yes. One doesn't make empty threats and then reverts to alternatives in that. So I think that was a very weak step, and something which should have been considered much better before they did that. There's much more calculation that is needed in there. And it seems to be a characteristic of DA negotiations, as we've also recently seen in a book that Tony Leon released about how exactly the DA went about in the negotiations. Those weren't very thorough negotiations at all, came at the moment of establishment of this coalition about just over a year ago. There were some strategic miscalculations that the DA made in that project, with especially they started asking that the directors general of the departments also be reconsidered and changed along with the ministers. And it could quickly be pointed out to them that is just absolutely against the Constitution, it's against every established form of government practice in that. And again, in this case here, I see miscalculations in negotiation strategy, in bargaining strategy, like the DA did this time.
Yeah. Give me a call, 086 000 2032. The lines are full. Quite a lot of commentary about this. Let's go to Lisiba out in Kgobokwane. Lisiba, good morning.
Good morning to yourself and good morning to Professor Susan Boyson. You see, I think, Susan, I don't agree with you, Prof, because the President has been very generous with the Democratic Alliance since the inception of this Government of National Unity, to the extent that they even threatened the President for exercising his prerogative, the constitutional prerogative. There is no arrangement as the ANC will enter into it which is going to undermine the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear about the role of the President as a head of state in terms of appointment. So, in fact, what I'm saying, on support by showing when the first minister who was supposed to be fired was Sibuwe Kharuve, the manner in which he handled the Bella Act. So the president was very generous. And as members of the ANC and members of the public were very concerned that the president must put his foot on the ground and make sure that this arrangement is working, with or without Democratic Alliance. We all know that the Deputy Minister, Winfred, has crossed the line, has tested the patience of the president. So the DA must accept. And the president should not allow this offer of DA having to replace on the table for far too long. If by next week they fail to provide the name, the president must go on appoint the deputy minister, whether from the ANC, from any other political party, that president will be correct within the Constitution. The DA must know that going forward, this is not going to be the business as usual. The president must flex his muscle and make sure that the cabinet is working, because the people of this country are ready to see service delivered. We are not going to.
But just one question. Just one question. Do you think the president is acting even-handedly across different cabinet and executive members, regardless of the political party they're from?
I think the president is been giving each a member of cabinet just to do the right thing. But this one of going to the foreign country, they cross the line. If you check and follow it, even the history, it happened with Nelson Mandela, it happened with Thabo Mbeki. They all fired cabinet ministers who did this one of going to foreign countries.
That's a different question. My question is specifically about Ramaphosa. Do you think he's acting even-handedly across the board, regardless of which political party the member of executive is from?
No. So far we're not. That's why we're pushing the president to flex his muscles, not only for DA ministers, all the ministers, including the ANC ministers who are dragging their feet. We're expecting the president to begin to take action. Starting with this one going forward.
Thank you so much for your call.
Business as usual.
Lisiba, thanks a lot.
We must not defend things that we are not supposed to defend.
Okay, Lisiba, thank you so much for your call. I appreciate that. Lisiba in Kobokwane, Sadirwa in Sekukune. Sadirwa, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call.
Go for it.
Yes, firstly, let me just make it clear that the president, for me, he is making the right noise and is making the right calls. When he was first came into presidency, many people thought that this is the president is going to massage the whiteness and white narratives. But from there, you look at the bills that he has passed. No past president has ever done that. And it is the bills that makes lots of noise from the DA. That is the first point that I want to make. And then the second point is whether this minister, was it the right call? It was the right call. It was insubordination. They can complain about the corrupt minister and so on and so on. But it is what it was directly came to him. It is a minister that was directly challenging him, and he made the call. The good thing is that he makes decisions, and he made that decision. And then whether BA is going to sustain this threat, they will sustain this threat. My view is that they will sustain this threat up until the last minute when the term gonna end. Maybe the last year of the term, the DA is going to pass a motion of confidence on the president just to create chaos and walk out from the GNU.
Yeah.
But for now, for the next 4 years, they're not going to do that. But I can bet it that on the last year, they're going to do that just to create chaos. And why would they want to pass a motion of no confidence on the president? For what reason, section? Could that motion could have come if White Wash was not fired? What is the reason? So it tells you that these people, they just do it out of pity, to say that they just want to create problems for the South Africans.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it, Sadirwa in Sekukune. Let's speak to Vivian out in KZN. Vivian, good evening. Good morning. Go for it.
Good morning, and good morning to your guest. I just want to make 3 quick points. Sorry. One is, I wish everyone would give this poor guy a break, the president. People criticize him when he doesn't act, and now he acts and he's being criticized. Second, rules are rules. Look at the size of our cabinet. If everyone just hopped on a plane at their own whim, can you imagine the cost?
Well, can I just, I hear you, Vivian. I just want to maybe just put this into the context as well. The government was not going to be paying for Andrew's trip to the U.S., to Washington. It was going to be paid for by his party. So it wasn't taxpayer money covering it.
Okay, but fortunately that was the case. But in other cases, that may not be the case, if you know what I mean. And thirdly, if just some arbitrary minister or deputy minister or senior civil servant hops on a plane and goes overseas, there's the risk of mismessaging, both diplomatically and government policy. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for that, Vivian.
Thanks very much.
Vivian calling us there from KZN. Really do appreciate that. Does this perhaps, Prof. Boysons, to maybe just to ask you this, to Vivian's point, does this inspire within South Africans the idea that the president is willing to act?
Yes, in one respect, it certainly does. That there is some action. There was an action against somebody. There was enforcement of rules. Yes, indeed, there are rules. The enforcement of rules in some respect, but it's overall, if one looks just beyond a small step in this particular case, these come few and far between. And Cyril Ramaphosa would really have to work on his image if he wants to secure a legacy in these last few years of his role. He would have to work on making very clear that there is systematic action, that he is not protecting a group of people who previously had not been loyal to him, but who became loyal to him because they're getting protection. He would certainly have to do much more. And if the action on Andrew Whitfield is an indication of a new page that is being turned, that should be welcomed. But we shall be waiting for that evidence there.
Yeah. Let's go to Lebogang out in Kimberley. Lebogang, good morning.
Good morning.
In fact, Lebogang, I didn't look at the clock correctly, so let me put you on pause. I do have to take a break, and when I come back from the break, I'll be speaking to you directly.
Let me get this right, Ron. You're a plumber by day and Pretoria's smoothest wedding DJ by night.
Yeah, it started out as a passion and now I've got bookings until December. And a smoke machine that needs its own seatbelt.
And you sold your car to buy a van through We Buy Cars.
Brew, it was music to my ears. Zero admin, no long queues. They pulled in, checked it out, and before I knew it, I had cash in the bank.
Now that's a banger. We Buy Cars. Geared for your passion, geared for you.
The citizens and the believers are in a high-level clash of emotions. Drama meets tension. The fight for 3 points is real. This is the PSL Promotional Playoffs. Catch the thrilling encounter between Cape Town City and Cashrick Stars this Monday, 30 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC2. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
7 minutes to the top of the hour. Taking your calls on this conversation. Let's go back to the lines. Lebogang out in Kimberley. Go for it.
Good morning to you, Oliver and the Prof. Listen, man, in relation to this matter of the deputy minister, my view is that the president has got there's no need for him to apologize to anyone, precisely because this is an act of open defiance. Whitfield should have known that he was being sent on a kamikaze mission, and this is the result of it. They knew he wasn't supposed to do that, and for that matter, he's just but a deputy minister. So he should have known that the DA, his own party, was sending on him on a kamikaze mission, and therefore this is the result of it. Let him live with it. Vote of no confidence or no or not. If they threaten not to participate as a party in the upcoming dialogue, that's cutting their nose to spite their own face. Because all of us, the rest of us, shall then go ahead and make the critical decisions about this matter. He went there representing the DA on a matter of state, and he should have known that this was going to happen to me. This is what was going to happen to me. I give the president 10 out of 10, and no, he shouldn't apologize to anyone. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Let's speak to Mandla in Mthatha. Mandla, good evening. Good morning. Sorry, my goodness. Good morning, Mandla. Go for it.
Good morning, and thanks for taking my call. I think the way you've raised the question, or what the professor is saying, that Ramaphosa must have had in terms of performance, and we could say that the question is self-limiting, or the professor's suggestion is self-limiting, because to be where you are required to be in terms of your work, it is part of performance. So if he was not required to be in America at that particular time and was not given permission to be there, it is part of performance. And he should have taken a lesson from his friend who was not comfortable about going, because he knew that in terms of the expectations of his position, if the president doesn't approve of it, then he may not take the trip. So I think it is important for these political parties, when they go into collisions at all levels of government, local, provincial and national, they need to forget who they are in terms of their party names. Once you're in government, then you are a servant of government. Forget what party you come from. You are there to play only by the rules of government. And if they all understood that, I don't think we would be where we are in terms of delivery at all these levels of government.
Yeah. Okay. Fascinating. Thanks a lot for that, Mandla. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Oliver.
Romeo in Port, you're our last caller. Go for it.
Hey, Oliver, greetings to you and my favorite professor there.
Go for it, yeah.
Good morning.
Yes. Look, Oliver, we all know that this is a build-up. You know, the Solidarity and AfriForum and the Democratic Alliance, they are one thing in this. And that is to challenge the policies that are now called radical policies, which is your BEE, BELA, and expropriation of land without compensation. And we know that matter, as we speak, it's a matter that it's so hot that they even had to seek for a big brother in America to assist. And for that matter, they have put poor South Africans in shambles. So they have put poor South Africans in trouble. Now, the president was making sure, and he's making sure now, that he's coming against that, because if not, then 60 million South Africans are going to be in trouble. The fact that the DA had to pay for that trip, it shows how deliberate this thing is of wanting to come against these radical policies. It has got nothing to do with anything but to be against these radical policies.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate that, Romeo calling us there. Prof, perhaps the last question to consider here as we wrap up the conversation. Has the trust, whatever may have been, between the DA and Cyril Ramaphosa specifically, has it been irrevocably broken?
Oliver, I think it has been broken for quite a while. We're not sure exactly at what point it happens. I was struck by this sea change that we see here when we looked at footage over the weekend of those moments, friendly body language when the new members of cabinet and the deputy ministers were welcomed on board into the GNU sometime middle last year. There was expectation of much better cooperation and convergence of at least practical policy ideas, if not broader ideology at that stage. And yet that moment slipped by. I think the moment started slipping by as we saw that the ANC was limiting consultation with the opposite, with especially the DA, and the smaller parties in the GNU did not demand greater consultation in line with a non-enforceable but very important political document, a statement of intent. And as the DA didn't get, the ANC was then further encouraged not to give. And of course, the challenges on the more radical policies were going to come, given that it is from the DA. And it's very sacred territory for the ANC to protect that. And so rules became established of, yes, internal challenges. Yes, it's fine to take matters to court. And of course, at lower level, at local government level, it is perfectly fine where all these political parties in the GNU contest against one another.
Yeah.
No obligation there. So it was a gradual moment where this trust got undermined to the point where the earlier rebellion in the ANC against this coalition has been amplified. And I think it is pushing at the moment to the point where it's probably going to break out. We know there have been several crises in the GNU government. Almost each time it's thought that this is a moment where it's breaking. But certainly each time we see this, it is moving closer to breaking. And with so many ultimatums and threats flying around mutually at this stage, it's going to be a big challenge to let it continue.
I am over time, so I hope you can give me an answer in 30 seconds. Will it be a big moment that breaks it, or will it be another small, seemingly innocuous moment like this, and the cumulative effect of these small, innocuous moments that will build up and break it?
I suspect that it will be small cumulative moments to the point that where there is just a point where the ANC is possibly going to declare the DA has dismissed itself from this coalition.
Yeah. Prof, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights. Always a pleasure talking to you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Oliver.
It's a minute after 11 o'clock. Let's take your latest news bulletin.
Thanks, Oliver. In our top stories, 4 former Transnet executives to appear in court and the PSA to intensify protest action over unemployed doctors. Good morning. 4 former Transnet executives are appearing in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court in Ekurhuleni after handing themselves over to police this morning. Their appearance is linked to an alleged fraudulent 93 million rand locomotive tender. In 2012, Transnet went on a tender for the acquisition of the more than 1,000 locomotives deal. The executives are charged in connection with the irregular payment of 93.4 million rand to Trillion Asset Management for organising a 30 billion rand loan to help buy locomotives. It's alleged it was a double payment as Transnet had already paid another transaction to advisory firm Regiments. Trillion allegedly did nothing to earn the fee but invoiced Transnet. Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment Minister Dion George has signed a notice to publish the second draft regulations for the environmental management of offshore ship-to-ship transfers for public comment. This follows the department's legal success in the African penguin settlement and its ongoing commitment to marine biodiversity. The regulations introduce a risk-based system to prevent and reduce harm from such transfers. Lirato Lalisa reports.
The department has introduced key updates in the second draft of regulations managing offshore ship-to-ship transfers. Updates include a reduced exclusion zone, clearer definitions, and stricter rules in the Algoa Bay, where operations will be limited during penguin breeding season. Night transfers may continue under strict conditions, with hydrophones used to cut underwater noise. Spill response teams must now be on standby within 30 minutes, and all environmental plans must be approved within 90 days.
Disgruntled Metrobus commuters believe the pay-per-kilometre system will be expensive and unaffordable. Metrobus says the newly introduced payment system, which comes into effect tomorrow, will see commuters pay only for the distance they've travelled. The Johannesburg Bus Company believes the system is fair and commuters were consulted on it. Metrobus commuter Tembisile Shabalala says the city's bus operator should instead be focusing on improving its poor services.
We are not going to afford that kind of transport which counts in kilometers. We have school children, we have grannies, we have so many people who cannot afford that, including myself. So we are here now to say no to tap in and tap out system. And again, we are complaining about the buses. Metro have very few buses. Buses are not being serviced. We are just not happy. There is so much that is going on. It's actually, they have to work on changing the services that will benefit us as their commuters.
The Public Servants Association, PSA, says it will intensify its protest action over unemployed doctors until all are hired by the KwaZulu-Natal Health Department. Last week, protests erupted across the province due to the more than 150 doctors who still remain without jobs. The PSA says the government must stop making empty promises on healthcare reform while hospitals face staff shortages and graduates sit idle. Mlungi Sindlovu is the provincial manager of the PSA in KZN.
As PSA in KwaZulu-Natal, we support the struggle of these unemployed doctors. The department has not yet specified the formula for the allocations, but purely based on the population distributions, we believe that KZN should receive not less than 20% of the 1,200 positions. So we are not looking at less than 200. So the minister has not specified for these positions. And the MEC, when she was engaging with unemployed doctors, they are still waiting for the response. It is for this reason, as PSA, we are saying the minister must be able to intervene and the National Treasury must allocate funds so the position can be advertised.
And finally, U.S. senators have been debating a contentious tax and spending bill late into the night. Democrats who are opposed to the legislation are trying to delay a final vote on the bill. U.S. President Donald Trump is keen to sign it into law by the 4th of July public holiday. Few Republicans have spoken so far, while the Democrats have repeatedly denounced the bill, particularly for cutting healthcare coverage for millions of poor Americans. The Senate Minority Leader, Democrat Chuck Schumer, said the bill would inflate the already vast national debt of the United States.
Republicans are about to pass the single most expensive bill in U.S. history to give tax breaks to billionaires while taking away Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and good-paying jobs for millions of people. CBO just this morning said it will explode the debt by $3.3 trillion.
Recapping the top story, 4 former Transnet executives are appearing in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court in Ekurhuleni after handing themselves over to police this morning. Their appearance is linked to an alleged fraudulent 93 million rand locomotive tender. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
We plan for vacations, retirement, and even tonight's dinner. But do we plan for our health? It's how we protect our family's future. So who are you staying healthy for? And how can you protect their future? Choose Dis-Chem Life, the life cover that helps you live a healthier, more rewarding life with health checks and extra rewards. Visit dischemlife.co.za now. Dis-Chem Life. Choose a better partner for life. Dis-Chem Life is an authorized FSP 50594, underwritten by Guardrisk Life, a licensed life insurer FSP 76. T's and C's apply.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Winter in Nelson Mandela Bay is for getting out and not staying in. Get outdoors on a green flag hiking trail or go for a game drive at one of 15 private reserves right at our doorstep. Hit the beach or get on board with a whale watching cruise. Explore the historical heart of our city or come vibe with the locals on a township tour. There's so much to discover. Find Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa on Facebook or visit nmbt.co.za. Nelson Mandela Bay, your winter and our summer destination.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.2 FM in Thohoyandou. You are listening to Oliver Dixon on SAFM. The Talking Point on SAFM. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Ten minutes after 11 o'clock, this is the third and final hour of The Talking Point. Thank you so much for being with us. Today marks the end of Youth Month in South Africa, as it is the last day of the month, the 30th of June. My goodness, what an interesting month it has been. June month, with June 16 falling in right in the middle of it, is a time of the year where we reflect on young people and the youth of South Africa, where we ask questions around what are the challenges that young people are facing, what are some of the victories that young people have been able to celebrate in recent times, and how do we navigate the world that we find ourselves in and how that world affects young people. And this morning, we're joined by three fantastic guests. Dominic Ralalala, who's a researcher at the Center for Social Development in Africa, also working on the basic package of support and other youth-related projects, with a great passion for youth mental health. Tebogo Molapisane, who's the co-founder and director at Amathuba Collective. Amathuba Collective is a social enterprise providing telephone-based mental health support to young people in work experience and employment programs, and Spelele Chirwa, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Activate Changemakers. Spelele has been working in the youth development sector for the better part of the last 12 years. And Activate Changemakers, what they do is they catalyze youth leadership through experiential programs to facilitate relationships amongst young changemakers and support their growing influence as a new political, economic, and social force. And I want you to be a part of this conversation. 086 000 2032. 1 in every 3 South Africans are under the age of 35. That means that a third of our country is youth. Yet, the young people bear the brunt of disenfranchisement, of slow and low economic growth, and our young people bear the brunt of the safety and security crisis that besets our country. How do we turn that around? And is there an opportunity for us to chart a way for young people to become economically included, to become economically active, and how that translates into the rest of society? There are shocking indicators about increased rates of incidents of suicide amongst young people, increased rates of mental health crises amongst young people, increased rates of drug use and alcohol abuse amongst young people in South Africa. And this is a generation of young people that are increasingly being told they're not working hard enough, that they're a hopeless generation, that they're not ambitious enough, and that they're not fighting for the right things, that they're concerned with the wrong things. Those are the narratives that stick to young people. But is there any merit to those narratives? Is there any merit to those stereotypes that young people face? Pelele, I want to start with you. Is there any credence to the narrative that young people are lazy, focused on the wrong things, not fighting for the right things, and simply are a hopeless generation?
Thank you, Oliver, and thanks to the listeners and thank you for inviting us. I think the narratives are not true from my perspective and the work that we do with Activate and what we see in communities. I think also the narratives that we're telling about young people start being what young people start believing in. I think we as a country need to be very aware of some of those narratives that we're putting out on young people. I mean, we've seen many young people who are doing amazing work, and most of their stories are not told the way that the stories of them doing lack of or coming from a place of diversity is always amplified. And what we're saying is that we need to also start amplifying the good news and the good stories of young people, and that's where Activate comes in, where we're like, even though the narratives out there could be negative, but we know and we see good of young people. And once we start putting and labeling our young people as lazy, what are we saying to young people as the nation, and how we give them hope to do good?
Yeah. I want to perhaps give you an opportunity, Tebogo, to also reflect on that question around the common narratives and stereotypes associated with this generation of young people.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. We obviously come across a lot of these stereotypes, and some of them become self-fulfilling prophecies. The young people, and it can get difficult in some terms of trying to make it in life and being confronted by realities of what is reported in the media, what politicians and other people, business people, say about young people, and it can get, before you know it, you start to believe what you're hearing, what you're reading. And now it's been about that. So we start there, where there's issues around how I see myself, and we build the young person from there. And then even where we don't necessarily do our training with the young people and just about the phone, that is the core of what we do. It's helping them to see themselves differently and actually giving them the space to think differently.
Deborah, I'm just going to pause you there because your line isn't all the way clear. So I'm going to put you back to Kanya to see if we can get you on a better line there. Dominic, do you have a reflection on that question?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Oliver, and good morning to the listeners. I think it's so important to reflect on that narrative, not only because of the ways that it affects young people and their ability to reimagine what's possible for their lives today, but also because it's linked to this idea of social exclusion, right, that young people experience. And when we begin to paint young people in that manner, what we see is that not only do they face structural barriers around accessing opportunities, but they also experience psychological distress and emotional distress. So the narrative itself is not true. Young people are moving in quite amazing ways with the little that they have and with the structural barriers that they face. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge where they are and the different ways that they're moving to change that narrative.
Describe to me, Dominic, what you think to be the life of an average young person in South Africa today.
I think the life of an average young person in South Africa today is very disconnected. And when I say disconnected, I mean we have all of these different interventions that aim to help young people to move through different doors. But what we're finding is that these revolving doors that young people go through lead to a cycle of hope and disappointment. And all of these revolving doors don't create sustainable opportunities because young people are moving through them all on their own. So what we're really trying to do with the basic package of support is to understand how these interacting barriers influence young people's lives and gradually move them out of this place of isolation which they find themselves in.
Yeah. This place of isolation is a very important place that young people find themselves in, because in that isolation is the turmoil of a mental health crisis developing there. In what ways, Tebogo, do you at Amatuba Collective respond to that? Because you guys work very closely with young people, giving mental health support there. What can you tell us about the mental health psyche of young people today, given the place of isolation they find themselves in? Deborah?
Hi, sorry, I was busy trying to get reconnected. Will you repeat the question, please?
Just now, perhaps while your line was busy getting reconnected, Dominic described to us that young people find themselves in a place of social isolation, given the conditionalities. And at Amatuba Collective, you guys work quite well and closely with young people, giving mental health support. Talk to us about the psyche that young people find themselves in, limbing around in this place of social isolation.
Yeah, so when we started the organization, it was just after the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdown, the actual lockdown, the hard lockdown. And we found the young people sitting in the townships mostly and with nothing to do, with nowhere to go. It was physically impossible to move around at that time. So as we were designing our solutions, we had that in mind to make sure that young people are able to access opportunities without necessarily having to move around. So most of our services went virtual, starting from applying for opportunities where you get into a program over 12 months to earn a stipend, or where you're getting calls to support you wherever you may be. And everything is actually aimed at ensuring that virtually you get that support, whether it's through WhatsApp line, through a phone call, through email. We make sure that we catch you there. And then we also link you in with an opportunity support areas. So organizations that do similar work as ours that may have psychologists and other support resources are able to be accessed in that way. So we connect the young people with those opportunities so that where there is trauma and things like that that need to be unpacked further, there is actually support that's available.
And in what way does that support lend itself towards solving the problem?
So the starting point for us is that we understand that a young person doesn't just rock up for an interview and get a job, regardless of what they qualified in. And we worked with young people from high school, from tertiary institutions, even postgraduates. So sometimes what you're qualified in does not determine how much confident you're going to be. So we know that people have faced a lot in life, a lot of trauma, and we need to work with that first before we build their confidence in the young person. So we're saying if you are in a program, before we teach you the technical skill, it could be any program. Before we go into technical skills, let's understand what are some of the things that may be in the way of your learning. And then we help you to come to terms with that, starting with accepting who you are, falling in love again with yourself. And then once we got the confidence layer built, then we can layer on top some functional skills, and then on top of that some technical skills. And we're finding that the numbers in terms of output improve dramatically when you have done that groundwork first before you teach them how to do a job.
Yeah. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. What are your thoughts and questions on this? I'd love to hear from you. 086 000 2032. We're going to take a short break.
Let me get this right, Ron. You're a plumber by day and Pretoria's smoothest wedding DJ by night.
Yeah, started out as a passion and now I've got bookings until December. And a smoke machine that needs its own seatbelt.
And you sold your car to buy a van through We Buy Cars.
Brew, it was music to my ears. Zero admin, no long queues. They pulled in, checked it out, and before I knew it, I had cash in the bank.
Now that's a banger. We Buy Cars. Geared for your passion, geared for you.
A stage awaits, not for applause, but for possibility. For over 40 years, Standard Bank has championed the arts, and at the National Arts Festival, we don't just watch talent rise, we help grow it. Through our Standard Bank Young Artist Winners, raw voices find power, unseen stories take the spotlight, and what begins as a dream grows into a legacy. Join us in Makanda for the festival. Standard Bank, proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. Keeping your family healthy this winter can feel like a daunting task. Try the Lung Shield range. It includes capsules to support healthy lungs and immunity, a syrup for kids that supports the immune system and promotes lung health, and an effervescent with 13 essential ingredients to optimize immune function. Put your family's health first this winter with the Lung Shield range. Available without a prescription at leading pharmacies. Lung Shield, prescribed by doctors, recommended by pharmacists.
You are listening to Oliver Dixon on SAFM.
23 minutes after 11 o'clock, we're talking about young people and where they find themselves now, what the challenges are, how we overcome that as we come to a close of Youth Month, where we reflected on these things. Spelela, perhaps I want to bring you back into the conversation here. As we talk about what support young people need, Activate Changemakers are working with young people who are making the change, who are bringing out the solutions and the support to our current crises. And so you have a first-hand view of how young people are perhaps not being supported sufficiently. Talk to us through some of those support barriers that you think young people face today.
Thank you. So I think with Activate Change Drivers, one of the biggest challenges that we see is that young people are thought of when it comes to conversations, when it comes to solutions of where we want to see the country. And we as Activate are saying we don't need to be invited. We don't also want to be a thought after, when it comes to the solutions and how do we create the solutions. With Activate, we are trying to create this network of young people that are challenging the status quo from different narratives and different areas within the country itself. If someone in the Eastern Cape is able to solve a challenge when they don't have water in their village, how do they come up with those solutions, and how can those solutions be multiplied when they come to a network where they can be able to share their connectivity, share most of their solutions? And I think I also want to say another barrier is that we assume that all young people, what they need is employment. Some young people need to be employers themselves, but they don't know how to start and where to start to be the employers of the future and to play in the economy of the country. So part of the conversation of the impact that we're doing at Activate is also saying we're not going to box young people into thinking that this is the only way and one solution into most of South Africa's youth challenges. The solution comes from the young people, but also at the same time is not a one solution for all the young people's needs in the country. Even in other youth from other aspect of the country, there are many solutions that we can come up with as young people, but also what they need is to be heard and also to be seen and to be valued as a great impact of what the country needs to go. So also not seeing them as just young people, but seeing them as young people that have a play and a role to play in what the country needs to be in the future.
Oftentimes, as young people are seen as Pelele, as you have your future ahead of you, there will come a time where you'll have these opportunities. Maybe not now. The opportunities need to go to those who have been waiting longer for it, the middle-aged and perhaps even the elderly, because it's become quite common in South Africa for someone at the age of 40 to have never had meaningful employment in South Africa, right? And so those people are thought of as first and who we're solving for rather than young people. And also given that young people only make up 1 in 3 South Africans of our population today, it is thought as, well, there's a lot of time to solve your problems down the line. And clearly there's something wrong with that sort of thinking because it keeps young people on the fringes of disenfranchisement. How do we change that thinking?
I think we change that thinking in many different ways. I think one way of looking at it is that you can't have all the solutions of all the youth gap in one. So someone who's 18 and someone who's 25 and someone who's just 34 are not the same. And we do understand the fact that the country is slowly and surely will get to a place where we would reach all the youth. But I think with those who are 40 and older, we do understand that there's a lot of care and need that is also needed because they wouldn't have had the opportunities. But I think there should be a balancing factor between those who are 18, those who are 25 and those who are 35 and those who are beyond the age of 35 because they also need some support. But I also want to say that the solution has to be that we tailor make and also look at the resources that are needed at that age. You cannot also think that the person who's 35 and the person who's 18, their needs are the same. The 18-year-old is still needing to find themselves into building confidence, and then also building confidence and also understanding that the world is still their oyster to be able to find who they are and what they want to be and what they want to contribute into the country. And then the person who's also beyond that age needs to be understood and to be caught and to be also utilized as a way of saying there's still some things that you can do for the country. So I think it's just not really looking at all of those ages and those who've passed the age of 35 as the same. I think we have to look at and reflect at what are the things that is needed. And also we can only do that when we ask the question, what is it that you need as a young person today for you to be heard and to be seen and you to play a role? Because most of the things that we're doing and creating, some of them are not youth-led or youth with the voices of the youth included. So ask the question as a country, what is it that we as young people need and what is it that we can do to contribute to what we want to see? Also.
Yeah. Give us a call. I'd love to hear from you. The number is 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107, 0614 104 107. Tweet me at Oliver_speaking on Twitter, Oliver Dixon on Facebook. If you're a young person listening to this conversation today, in what ways do you feel perhaps unsupported and in what ways do you feel supported? In what ways do you feel included in the conversation and perhaps excluded from the conversation that's meant to be about shaping your life, your future? What's the help that you need? And how do you think we need to think differently about the place of young people in South Africa? 086 000 2032. That's the number to give us a call. I'll be taking your calls on the other side of this, and your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. It's just about 11:30. Let's take your latest headlines.
Thank you, Oliver. Good morning. I'm Kolofelo Tefo. In the headlines this hour, 2 former Transnet executives are appearing in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court in Ekurhuleni after handing themselves over to police this morning. Their appearance is linked to an alleged fraudulent 93 million rand locomotive tender. Joburg Water says water tankers will be made available to all areas affected by infrastructure maintenance work from today until Wednesday. And further, fault fire crews in the U.S. state of Idaho have come under attack while fighting a fire on a mountainside, leaving 2 of them dead. I'll have details on this and other stories at 12.
This week on Off-Pitch Goals, Kaizer Chiefs greats and Bafana Bafana 2010 FIFA World Cup stars René Solonyane and Siphiwe Tshabalala take on the food and beverage industry. The legendary duo own one of Soweto's most vibrant hangout spots and invite us to be the tastemakers of the inner workings of their establishment. Streaming on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturday, 5 July at 8:30 p.m. Off-Pitch Goals, where we showcase how the stars score in business. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Tani Esther, or should I say the Tupperware Tani? How's business going?
Business is booming. I've been operating out of the boot of my car for 10 years, but shame, it couldn't keep up with my growing empire.
Okay, so you sold it to We Buy Cars?
Yes, quick. Sold my old one, bought a bigger one. I even sold some of my Tupperware to the friendly guy who picked up my car.
Stick to what you know best, eh, Tani?
Excuse me?
Never mind. We Buy Cars. Geared for your business, geared for you.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. This Youth Month, SAFM celebrates the spirit, power, and potential of young South Africans. Join us as we dive into conversations that matter, from innovation to education and skills for the changing world, empowering youth for meaningful economic participation. Because at SAFM, we're not just talking, we're leading the conversations that move us. Who says talking never solves anything? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
It is 28 minutes to the top of the hour. Thank you so much for being with us. We're talking about the fate and state of young people in South Africa today. Be a part of the conversation. Give me a call, 086 000 2032. I'm in conversation with Dominic Ralalala, Tebogo Molapisane, as well as Spelele Chirwa. Let's go to the lines. Let's speak to Thabo in Tabanchu. Thabo, good morning. Go for it. Thabo?
Sir, but obviously at some stage I was one. But I'm very passionate about youth development and economic development in general.
Yeah.
In fact, I've participated in enterprise development programs myself in my personal capacity as a beneficiary. But I've also worked in government for over 23 years, and the part of the work that I was doing was around broad-based black economic empowerment, which is basically involves skills development, giving young people the opportunity to acquire the skills, but it also involves things like enterprise development, where you support small businesses to be able to get to a level where they become competitive so they can also become suppliers to the big corporates and also to government. But I think the biggest challenge is with most of government departments and entities like the CITES, because the CITES play a very important role when it comes to skills development. But the people, they are very incompetent. For example, now myself, I'm in the liquor distribution and retail business.
Yeah.
And I employ close to 20 young people. But the CITES is supposed to come on board and give those people the skills and give them the stipend. That they're supposed to do is their mandate. But they'll take you from pillar to post because why? They're incompetent and they're also corrupt because they want to make sure that only the people that they know benefit from this program so they can also get something in return. So really, I think we got the best policies and we got older people like myself. I mean, I'm 47, I'm turning 48, I've worked over 23 years. And at my age, I feel I've had opportunities. I must give opportunities to young people. But the people in government are very incompetent.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Thabo. Really do appreciate it. Thabo and Tabanchu calling us there. Spelele, perhaps to ask you, and Dominic, also wants you to chime in on this. Young people have been the center of government policy imagination through the employment stimulus program and the youth employment support program, the YES program in the presidency. In Gauteng, there's been the variation of that called TSEPA 1 million, and we're always told about how many employment opportunities are created. And I'm always skeptical and suspicious of the word employment opportunities rather than just saying how many people are in jobs now. Have those policy interventions been sufficient? Dominic, I want you to go first on that.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver. I think that's an important question. And I think when we talk about, this idea around whether these employment opportunities have been sufficient, I think we need to go back to just thinking about young people firstly, not as just work seekers, but individuals who have hopes and aspirations. And how we look at employment, how we define employment is important because young people are moving from one opportunity to another, and they're doing so across different timelines. So some of the work that we've seen being done by the National Management Pathway Network, which the BPS is a part of, is really beginning to understand how do we catch young people at different stages of their employment, and how do we begin to build these different networks to allow young people to be supported so that they're not stuck in one opportunity and then leave and left on the outskirts or on the margins of the different systems that we have. So it's really about understanding at which point do we catch young people, not just in employment, but also in learning, and how do we begin to connect the different skills and the different opportunities that young people have been in and integrate those opportunities so that young people are not lost in the system.
Yeah.
So while I understand that the broader issue is employment, but there are many other ways, as Pelele has reflected on, that young people can begin to engage more meaningfully in the labor market.
Yeah. Have these employment stimulus programs and the YES program and related policies, Pelele, been effective in changing the story?
I could say at a margin, but not at the employment rate that we want to see as the country. I'll give you an example. I think one of the biggest things is that we are not creating sustainable jobs for young people. A 6 months, a year internship is not sustainable for a young person. And also, after that employment opportunity or a training opportunity, who catches the young person when that opportunity or contract ends? We need business to come. I think it's a big conversation, a South African employment conversation that needs to happen about not it being a government responsibility, but it being a country that would include civil society, that would include business to come on board on how do we create this employment for sustainable employment for young people, where we're not doing this revolving doors where a young person leaves this internship and joins another one. Even if I'm a young person and I'm not having a sustainable job, that will also hinder my mental health and hinder my confidence on being an employable person in the country. But also, again, how do we create young people also who are going to be key players in the economy and not just employees, but employers themselves? That's a bigger conversation.
I love that you used the word confidence there. Tebogo, to what extent does unemployment and disenfranchisement erode the confidence and esteem of young people?
We often talk about what happens to a person when they have nothing to do. And you take an example of a young person that finishes let's say you finish as a university and you have a degree and you're unemployed. If you sit at home more than 18 months after you graduate and you didn't get to use what you learned, at some point, what you learned is irrelevant. And you know what that eats off at your confidence, definitely. And I think that is the thing is the programs we have are looking at stipends in the main. People are not looking at the quality of employment that the young people are getting, and also how do we meet the young person where they're at and take it from there in terms of I was sitting at home doing nothing, and depending on how long I was sitting at home, actually the work you need to do with me is help me find me first before we talk about what I earn or what I do, because that will come in time. But I need to be confidently showing up in the world. And so that can definitely erode completely the confidence of the young person. And obviously there's also expectations from family, from society, on top of everything else. So I'm already feeling like I have nothing to contribute. And then on top of it, everybody's got all these opinions and statements that are being made, employability and unemployable, that is thrown around, that eats at a person.
Yeah. Let's go to the lines. Let's speak to Lodwick out in Limpopo. Lodwick, good morning. Go for it.
Good morning, Oliver. I was listening to the last speaker, is Tabo, I think, from State. I'm in the same predicament. I found myself where I'm extra willing to come and have an input, a positive one, right? Trying to establish, like say, an engineering company, farming and stuff. But when you go to government, come and support us, right? You go there, you ask them these seekers and stuff. You ask the NYDA, long back. Our government is not so supportive. And one of the good days, we have these young graduates, we have a lot of them. One of the good days, something will crack. Because it can't be correct that a young person is being is advised to go and further their studies to learn so that they can acquire skills after that and implement them for their own well-being, for their lives. But now they are stagnant, they are frustrated. And some of us, we see this year, we are so more than willing to come and have an input to build this country. But our government, when you go to them and say, this and that, you show them, okay, I have these skills, I have this, my initiatives are this. They give you these thick forms and meet the people, these people, and then these people, man, it's all corruption is killing this country. Let me tell you that.
Okay.
And it's killing us.
Yeah.
Killing us.
Thanks a lot for that. Really do appreciate it. Lodwick calling us there from Limpopo. Dominic, we've had two callers now lament the role of government in youth development and giving young people opportunities. But is it the sole responsibility of government to roll out programs, policies, and opportunities for young people in building a better future? Or are there other parts of our collective makeup that's also failing young people?
Thanks, Oliver. No, I don't think that it's the sole responsibility of government. And I think in this conversation, we've reflected, quite a bit on the different sectors that can come to the party, business being one of them, particularly because of the longer term scarring effects that Tebogo mentioned about that affect young people long term when going into employment or coming out of employment. I think that what needs to happen is a more coordinated approach to understanding youth unemployment more broadly. And part of that is understanding that young people are holistic. So looking at not just one life area, their mental health, their household situation, the communities that they come from. Some of the work that we're doing in the basic package of support is understanding the different services that young people are surrounded by in their community and trying to connect them to those services. We've got a massive civil society space that has been supporting young people quite well. But the issue is really integrating this approach and identifying these different networks so that young people are not stuck in one place trying to access these different services. But it's really about bringing the services closer to young people, particularly young people who are discouraged, so those who are not in employment, education, and training. There is one point that I wanted to reflect on, Oliver, if I may. The issue around tackling young people who are 18 to 25 as opposed to older adults. And I think it's important for us to reflect on the data around that.
Yeah.
We have seen, research has shown us that unemployment or exclusion more broadly leads to longer term unemployment if it is not tackled at a younger age.
Right.
So young people themselves are in their emerging adulthood stage. And this is the time where they're gaining independence, they're exploring their identities. And it's important for us to look at tackling that risk onset before it sets in long term. So I just wanted to make that point because a lot of the times we get the argument that, our programs are not dealing with issues that people who are over the age of 35 face. And while it's important, that tailoring approach that Spelele spoke about is what we need to bring into the conversation a bit more.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I think that broadly employability programs are doing the work, but it's just a matter of bringing in business, bringing in the private sector to support young people and look at the different outcomes outside of employment. What are the different outcomes that we're looking for that would show us that young people are moving through these critical stages in a more sustainable way towards employment?
We have just a minute left, Tebogo, so I want to give you 30 seconds to just give me your closing thoughts and remarks there.
Just in closing, I think the young people are not just the future of this country, they are this country. If you look at the numbers, you'll see that they could easily become the government if they all went and voted tomorrow. Like literally, we need to be engaging them and coming up with solutions that speak to them today in terms of what they want to do with this country.
Yeah. Spelele, closing remarks?
I think the closing remark would be about how are we inviting young people to show up with everything that they bring? How are we creating the resilience that young people need to have to be able to tackle South Africa's challenges today? Because you need to not just be a young person, you need to be a certain young person to navigate South Africa in what it is today. So how are we inviting the young people to come forth is also of important.
Yeah, I'm going to have to thank you there for your time this morning. Really do appreciate it. Spelele Chirwa, Tebogo Molapisane, as well as Dominic Ralalala. And thank you so much for your calls and engagement on that. I know we had a few more calls and voice notes to get through, but unfortunately, we have run out of time. We're at the end of the show. But before I leave, I do want to leave you with this message. Attention to all grant beneficiaries. Couldn't switch your SASSA Gold card for the new Postbank Black card? Well, no worries. Your SASSA Gold card is still valid and fully functional. You'll continue receiving your grants safely and securely. No need to change your card or to switch banks. Use it as usual at ATMs, retailers, and spaza shops. Don't be misled by anyone claiming you must switch your bank cards. Your money is safe with Postbank, a bank where you can be banking where banking can be completely free. Stay informed and stay safe. Postbank, your bank. From myself and the team, goodbye for now. Cheers.
They all believe they will be crowned champions, but gold medallions are reserved for the best of them all. It is the incredible clash of the 12 African women's national teams. Catch all the 24 matches of the Cap Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025 on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
SFM's award-winning drama department presents another episode of the book, A Testament of Hope. the autobiography of Dr. Sam Motswenyane. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised.
Both Jocelyn and I worked quite far away from where we lived. She traveled every day by train to Park Station and then by bus to Alexander Township, where she taught until she found another post in Dube Village. I also traveled from Dube to Park Station by train for some years until I was able to own a car. When we moved to Dube Village, there was no branch of the Methodist Church, and we both participated in the building of a new church and congregation there. I was already serving as a lay preacher on a trial basis at the time, and we were also members of the church choir that was started after the new church was established. During the 1970s, we moved to Nooitgedachte near Mabopane. The Mabopane Methodist Circuit had only been newly created as an independent unit from the old Blood Street Circuit, and my wife and I again participated in the building of the Mabopane Circuit, which covered a very wide area, encompassing townships and villages like Winterfeld, Soshanguve, Madidi, Maboloka, Madinyani, Makaunyani, Shakung, Klepgat, and Muiletswane. In many of these places, people worshipped and prayed to God under the trees as there were no church buildings. In some places, we worshipped in the homes of church members. Consistent efforts were made at all times to motivate the congregation to build churches wherever and whenever this was possible. The work I was doing for the African National Soil Conservation Association, ANSCA, at the time of our marriage necessitated a great deal of travel, which quite often compelled me to be away from the family. At first, my wife had a problem with accepting and adjusting to my busy schedule. This sometimes caused tension that required cool heads to resolve. I can vividly recall that shortly after our marriage, I had to leave home to make arrangements for the first annual conference of ANSCA. The conference was due to be held at Seplan, with practical soil conservation demonstrations taking place at the farm Blomvale, Miss M.T. Soga's family farm a few kilometers away. I left home under protest as my wife would not let me go because she argued that my clothes were not ready. I refused to wait for the shirts to be ironed on the following day, for the simple reason that I had already made firm appointments with the ANSCA and government officials for that day at the conference venue. When the president of ANSCA, Mr. W.B. Ngakani, arrived at the conference a day later, bringing with him my iron shirts, I had so much to compliment my wife for. She had made every effort to ensure that the shirts did reach me as she had initially wished to prepare them. She further, in writing, apologized for the misunderstanding that had prompted me to leave home rather unceremoniously. I became a full lay preacher in Mabopane and also joined the Methodist Young Men's Guild called Amadotan. From the late 1970s until 1984, I served as circuit steward of the Mabopane Methodist Church. My wife became a leader of the Women's Manyano and served on many of the committees of the church. The church has played a very crucial role in keeping our family together. My wife and I celebrated our 56th year of a happy married life together in 2011. We thank the Almighty God for the bounteous, countless blessings that He has showered upon us. We thank Him for the 6 sons He blessed our marriage with and for our many grandchildren. Chapter 7. Honoring the Soil, the National Veld Trust and ANSCA. Towards the end of 1951, I returned to Johannesburg from the Transkei to find good news from Dr. Ray Phillips. During my absence, 2 important members of Parliament, namely Mr. John Cope of the United Party and MP for Houghton, and Senator Reynold Jones had visited the Jan Hofmeyer School. They came to find out if the school could recommend somebody to be selected to help promote a new soil conservation project which the National Veld Trust intended to help initiate specifically for black people in South Africa. Taking into account my background and experience in rural community development, Dr. Phillips said he had recommended me as the best candidate for the proposed project by the National Veld Trust, which was a non-governmental organization established in 1943 by a group of public-spirited white South Africans who foresaw the serious threat posed by soil erosion to future generations in the country if nothing positive was done to stop or significantly reduce the rampant problem. At that time, it was estimated by soil scientists and conservationists that approximately 300 million tons of good, productive soil in South Africa was being washed away into the sea annually. At the beginning of 1952, I started my employment with the National Veld Trust for the specific purpose of investigating the feasibility of creating a soil conservation movement for black people. The aims of the proposed organization were similar to those of the National Veld Trust, which sought to create general awareness of the enormity of the soil erosion problem, as well as a concomitant urgent need for the adoption of prudent conservation practices. This necessitated interacting closely with the government to help formulate appropriate policies. Other means employed for awareness raising were publications, films, and periodicals circulating mainly among its members. Supporting this was the extensive use of the media and public lectures delivered at schools and to farming communities across the country. The symbol by which the National Veld Trust was identified was the Green Cross. The organization's greatest contribution to the country and to the promotion of the conservation ideology in particular must be credited largely to its gifted visionary, Managing Director Dr. T.C. Robertson, fondly known as TC within conservation circles. Dr. Robertson ably led and built the organization for over 2 decades. He was a brilliant, cheerful man of Scottish descent who was born in Middelburg, Transvaal. He was a graduate of the University of the Witwatersrand and was later awarded an honorary doctoral degree by the same university in recognition of his outstanding contribution to the development of soil conservation awareness in South Africa. Dr. Robertson could be characterized politically as a liberal who served as a member of the United Party under General J.C. Smuts and Sir de Villiers-Graaff. Physically, he was a tall, robust, imposing figure with a strange combination of grey hair and a large black moustache. Dr. Robertson, as the managing director of the National Veld Trust, assumed personal responsibility for my training, mentoring, and overall preparation for the formidable task that I was engaged to execute. As an eminent scholar and writer, he commenced my training lessons by prescribing numerous books on conservation for me to read. In addition, he urged me to also read as many Veld Trust magazines and publications as were available at the organization's head office library located at Vancouver House in President Street, Johannesburg. Furthermore, as part of my practical training and initiation into soil conservation arena, Dr. Robertson arranged visits for me to meet with leading experts in the conservation field. Among the outstanding scientists and conservationists that I was privileged to meet were Dr. T.D. Hall, Dr. Dudley Meredith, Professor W.F. Fox, Mr. K.E. Penson, and Professor Punch Davidson at the Witwatersrand University Farm, Frankenwald.
That was another episode of the book, A Testament of Hope, the autobiography of Dr. Sam Motswenyane. The book is available online on www.kmmr.co.za, KMMR Publishers, and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursday on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Samson Kumalo. Technical production, Wiseman Manele, Nanda Koza, and Tato Mapuruma.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Twelve o'clock on Monday, the 30th of June, payday for some. A very warm welcome to Update at Noon here in SAFM. Leading the conversation, I'm John Gericke in for Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up this hour.
We will provide a comprehensive response and analysis of what this means for the Government of National Unity, for the work we're doing in Parliament, and for our strive to ensure that there's a cohesion.
The ANC has vowed to reflect on the political implications of the DA's decision to withdraw from the national dialogue, and 4 former Transnet executives are in court in connection with a dodgy 93 million rand locomotive tender. Share your views with us. 41391, charged at R1.50 in SMS. You can call us on 086 000 2032, and our WhatsApp voice note number is 082 692 3909. You can find us on Twitter or Facebook at SABC News_radio, and please use the hashtag Update at Noon. That and plenty more coming up in the next hour or so. First, though, let's get the latest news with Ondela Mbana.
So they're dealing on the one hand with the
Thank you, John. Top stories this hour. Fort Hare University bodyguard murder suspects arrested and Joburg water plant maintenance underway. Good afternoon. I'm Kolofelo Tefo. 2 more suspects have been arrested in connection to the murder of Umboneli Vesele, who was the bodyguard of Fort Hare Vice Chancellor and Principal Professor Sakelo Buhlungu. They are expected to appear in the Alice Magistrates Court in the Eastern Cape today. Vesele was shot and killed in